We are live.
Okay, thanks, Mike and LTV. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals meeting of May 4th, 2021. We have three public hearings and a rehearing this evening and another conversation. So full agenda, we'll get going. We'll start off with our first public hearing this evening. The applicant here is Gerard Cutillo, and the lot size and location is 29,605 square feet at 71 Gloucester Avenue, Montauk Beach Development Core, Central Portion, File 56-1927, in Montauk, tax map number 300-19-7-1. The description is to construct a 512 square foot swimming pool with pool equipment, a 584 square foot patio, 32 square foot entry well, 92 square foot stairs, 50 linear feet of retaining walls, an outdoor shower, and to allow a fence 65 square feet shed and clearing to remain on a parcel of land containing freshwater wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-4-20 of the town code, and a variance is required for this application. A variance of 50 feet from 255-4-30 minimum wetland setbacks of the town code are required to allow the fencing to remain 50 feet from wetlands where a 100-foot setback is required and any other relief necessary. This is in a B residence zoning district. The flood zone here is X. Secret class is type 2. And council, do we have a proper affidavit of service and posting?
I have an affidavit that the mailings were done on the 15th day of April and the posting was done on the 19th day of April, so the paperwork appears to be in order.
Okay, thank you. And this is in Montauk. Did you take this one?
Yes,
this
I did. Yes, I did, Mr. Chair.
Great. If you would, Ed, with your field report, thank you.
Michael's going to help me with some photos that come up.
Right.
This parcel is front side, it's a corner lot, so it's on Gloucester, where the main entry to the property is, but it's also on Fairview, which is the road that many of you know runs around the golf course in the middle of town, that section of town. This is the notice that's put that's out now on Fairview. Next. Here I'm looking south on Fairview. This is a straightaway on what was once the race course run. Next. Now I'm looking north again, and the road continues up towards your left, and on your right you see as Gloucester begins to merge back into Fairview. Next. I took this picture here from Fairview. We're going to discuss this swimming pool area, but this gives you an idea a little bit of the slope of the land. As you can look across, that swimming pool will be behind the house in that area that Michael is pointing out. And you can see towards your right, the wetlands are down in below to your right, and this is a fairly steep runoff coming down that way. And that's going to be a factor, I think, in Michael's discussion. Next. This is the posting on Gloucester. Next. This is looking east on Gloucester back towards Westlake Drive. Next. And here we are looking back up at Fairview. Next. Here we are standing, I'm standing on Gloucester looking in the driveway that releases a residence, and it goes directly to this 2-car garage. Next. From that garage, we see an accessory building that sits off to its east. Next. And then beyond that is the shed. There'll be another photo to show how they relate, but this shed sits out beyond where the accessory building was. Next. From that spot where I was looking at that shed, I'm looking down through, and there'll be some other close-ups. You're looking at a fenced-in area, which is a natural garden that the applicant has placed. This is in somewhat in discussion based on the request for a variance here. Beyond, you can see that the land is sloping down a bit, and it slopes down to Peters Run, the beginning, the early part of Peters Run here that continues on down to Lake Montauk. Next. Here we are closer, and we can see exactly what this garden looks like. It's got a number of apple trees in there that have been nurtured by the applicant, and he's got a few other plantings, and he's got a deer fence that encloses the entire area. Next. From there, I looked right, and we can see there's a house that's very close into this property. Now, those of us who've had the opportunity to look at the map of this property, it's basically a flag where from Fairview, we have a straight line behind this house parallel to the back of the house. And then we turn and head south. So it's running, the property line's running east-west and then head south. And so it's something like 3/4 of a large square that, represents a bit of a flag. But this house winds up being very close in proximity where the pool is going to be placed. Next. And I'm looking through now to another neighbor. And again, that low area below us that you can see down in there, some higher grasses, that's Peters Run. There'll be some other photos of it, but that's off of the property of that we're considering. But it is going to be affected in terms of location and how far away it is for the structures that are on this parcel that's being discussed. Next. Again, this is me getting around behind that enclosed and looking down, and you see the nature of what's going on. Some of this is invasive, some of it is native, but all of it is stretching right down into the wetlands. I'm just about on the edge of where wetlands has been marked. It's just a little beyond where I'm standing here. Next. This is just looking back up from that area. The property runs across the way. In the far distance, you see a house across Fairview, but the property is fairly long from one end to another. And that house, the house is beyond where the car is. And actually, that is not a house across Fairview. That's the house in question. I'm sorry. And then we have the two accessory buildings, and I'm standing out near where the garden is. Next. This is an area turning and looking. I'm looking east now. This is the neighbor to the east. And this is an area that the applicant has done some revegetation, and there will be a question raised here about the nature of the material that was put into this area. This was done somewhat earlier, and I know Michael has a comment about that. Next. Now I've gone to a far corner away from where that other building was. You can see the fence for that garden. I've got so many pictures of this because this is a hard lot to get a handle on when you're walking around it. It's because of the flag, but you can kind of see that what's been cleared running down very close to a line that's considered the wetlands. And so it's down beyond this by another 30 feet, but you can see what the brush has grown up and around that area. Next. Here I am looking down towards Peters Run. Now, beyond those trees, and there'll be another photo, there's water running in there, and that's Peters Run. That split rail fence is on the property of the applicant, and this is at the far eastern side of the property. Next. A little closer, I walk down to just about the property line. Somebody else's property encompasses Peters Run, but you can see water there directly, and it's moving pretty rapidly. Next. Looking from that spot, I just turned around to say that from their property line, looking back up at the garden, and the garden is set about 50 feet back from wetlands, as you've seen in the TAM. And so this gives you an idea of exactly what the problem is in discussion of the garden. Next. From that same spot, you see the garden on the right, you see the neighbor's house. Next. Again, looking now, I've come back a little bit further on the property. I just want to give you an idea that this property has this big dog leg in it that heads off towards that white house in the distance. Next. Just looking back, go next, looking back to the house. Now I've gone around behind. Now, the second issue here, other than the garden, is one about the installation of the swimming pool. That swimming pool is going to go just about where the arrow is placed. And also, and there'll be another photo, there is the discussion of a set of stairs to a basement entry and a window well, which you can see the beginnings of work is being taking place right now. Next. Here I'm looking back out at Fairview, and again, just to show you that this property comes out from the house to our right of this photo is where the pool is to be set, but the land drops off rather dramatically down towards Peters Run. Next. Again, looking from a distance, that's the area that the pool is going to take. So if we look from the house to the right and come out, you'll see getting that pool set in there will take some care in terms of that slope. And remember, there's a retaining wall that's got to go beyond the pool. So that retaining wall is out about at the edge of that of that crest of where the land starts to fall off. Next. I look back at the house because this is as far east as the edge of the pool would go. I'm looking back across, there's some brickwork there. This is the eastern edge of the pool. There's some shrubbery will have to be removed. Next. Looking down into that stairwell, you have an idea of the construction. Some work has begun. The door is hidden by the vegetation, but the window well off to the side and the landing to come down is that center rectangle. Next. And just looking back, pool, slope, house beyond. This is the area that will have to be discussed in terms of the location of the swimming pool. Next. There's one more again, looking back towards that. Now, the plan for an additional structure that will house a shower and a pool equipment will be against the two-car garage beyond that the large piece of shrubbery. Next. Is that it? There wasn't a lot of them, I know. I think that's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ed, for that thorough report. Board members, any questions? No? Okay. Let's go to the applicant or the applicant's agent. I believe we have Tara here, Tara Burke here.
Good evening, Chairman Whalen and members of the board. I'm Tara Burke here on behalf of Gerard and Laura Cotillo, who own 71 Gloucester Avenue.
Thanks. Tara, I'm going to swear you in. I'm going to go ahead and swear you in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. Go ahead, please.
Okay. This property was acquired by the present owners in 2001 and was previously reviewed by the zoning board in 2014 for the detached garage and the accessory structure next to it. And that was issued an administrative natural resource special permit, and then a CO was issued for that in 2016. As was stated by member Johan, the application is for a swimming pool and associated structures, a shed, and a native garden. The application has been revised several times during the course of review from our initial submission to the zoning board in August of 2019. We've listened to the comments from the planning department. We've had several conversations with the planning department on how to address their concerns, and we've reduced the scope of the requested relief within wetlands jurisdiction. The initial application was for a 512 square foot swimming pool, and that has since been reduced via the latest submission in January to 420 square feet. The basement entry and stairwell to the existing house that was in several of those photos was legally existing, and the proposed, which is under construction, is actually a reduction in size from the previously existing one, and it's 150 feet, the proposed, from the wetlands. So just the portion that's being removed is in natural resource special permit jurisdiction. And that's been reduced from the initial application. And the garden fence has also been relocated to eliminate the need for one variance. It was originally proposed at 47 feet from the wetlands, which triggered an additional variance. He's since removed the fence, moved it in 3 feet. So we're only now requesting one variance for the fencing for the native garden to remain 50 feet where 100 feet is required. The proposed swimming pool, associated patio, outdoor shower, and retaining wall for the pool, and then that 65 square foot lawnmower shed are all situated at least 100 feet from the wetlands and only in natural resource special permit jurisdiction. And I spoke in depth with the planner about this project several times, and we understand that there's some concerns about clearing on site. The calculations for the proposed clearing are pretty close to what's permissible on the property. So they're still technically within allowable limits, but awfully close. So we understand that concern. I think it's important to note that the native garden, which is roughly 1,300 square feet, is counted as cleared because it's being maintained. But it's the clearing calculations are a tiny bit misleading because it is vegetated, but I fully understand, that it doesn't meet the town's definition of clearing. Just pointing that out, but it does contain native blueberries and apple trees. Nonetheless, we're happy to work with the planning department and the zoning board to address any concerns with respect to clearing. as best we can, and will provide for additional vegetation where necessary. I think it's important to note that just as Member Johan had said, the lot is a really strange shape, which you can see on this survey. And the portion of where the swimming pool is proposed, there's a residence between the pool and the wetland. And all the activity in that area is proposed at least 100 feet from the wetlands. So that's natural resource special permit jurisdiction. Now where that jog comes out that I think we're referring to as the sort of the flag portion, that does have Peters Run right there at the southern edge, which you can see behind the native garden. I guess just for the sake of clarifying the record, the revised technical analysis memo, which the planner and I had spoken about, at the time it was written, the retaining wall south of we spoke about the retaining wall that was south of the proposed pool. And we submitted a revised plan prepared by Grimes Land Design in January of 2021 that shows the top and the bottom of wall elevations. So the retaining wall is only going to be 4 feet high. And we have shown for 2 feet of disturbance behind the wall, which I know was a concern in the initial technical analysis memo. And so we've accounted for some clearing behind that on the submission as of January 2021. The retaining wall will be installed from the uphill side with either a small excavator or by hand. And the 2-foot disturbed area behind the retaining wall is proposed to be revegetated, and we have submitted a revegetation plan for that in that January 2021 submission. Grimes Land Design is confident that the 2-foot behind the wall is ample room for the installation that they will be performing. The area where the pool is proposed is relatively flat. And like I said, we'll only need that 4-foot retaining wall there, and it can be done by hand or small excavator from the inside edge of the property away from the wetland. The swimming pool meets the dimensional setbacks for swimming pools from neighboring structures and from neighboring property lines. It's situated at least 60 or 70 feet from the neighboring house. If you look on that aerial photo, the house is actually situated, the neighbor's house that was spoken about is situated behind the garage and the accessory structure. The pool is actually sort of in front and further away from that residence, and the neighbors have not objected to the application. As far as that pool area goes, there is topography on the south side of the proposed pool, and of course we don't want any runoff. We're happy to install dry wells, contain all runoff on site, keep the dry wells for the pool at least 100 feet from the wetlands, and the retaining wall, which I said was 4 feet high, is 114 feet from the wetlands. Now back to the clearing issue. And the garden. I just want to speak to that because I know that's had some discussion back and forth. The planner just suggested that we relocate the garden to closer to the Gloucester Avenue side of the property. That was in one of his, I think it was in the sketch associated with the first TAM. And the problem with relocating it there is that there's no tree there's a tree canopy. So a native garden won't grow very well underneath the tree canopy. The location where it is now was selected because there was no tree canopy in that area. So although the relocated location is certainly further from the wetland and looks good on paper, in practicality, I don't know how well the native garden would actually grow there. With respect to the clearing and the garden location, the property owner submitted a letter to the file noting that he's happy and willing to revegetate the cleared area nearest to the wetland behind the garden. He wanted the board to know that this area has always had a cleared trail to the wetland, which you can see just along that the property line behind the garden going to the wetland. But he's happy to revegetate that. And he also wanted to make sure that I let you know that when he cleared it to put the native garden in, that area was, he found it to be a bit of a dumping ground. There was quite a bit of construction debris in there. There was an old swing set. And, you know, at the time, he didn't realize he needed permits to put a native garden in. Obviously, I have since told him that he does. But, you know, he just wanted you to know that he is a good steward of the land, and that was a bit of a dumping ground. And in his eyes, the native garden is an improvement to what was there previously. But that being said, we are happy to maintain that 50-foot buffer. We fully understand your concerns with the proximity to the wetlands, and you know, he has no intentions of using fertilizer or anything like that for the native garden. So he's also happy to revegetate around the sides of the garden and the back of it. The clearing is a little bit further out than the garden itself. And if we revegetate those areas around the garden and then that trail that the deer go on down to the wetland, that alone is about 1,000 square feet of revegetation. So that would bring the clearing numbers significantly higher and perhaps closer to your comfort level. And I think it's also important to note that the fencing for the garden is the only variance we requested. We don't believe it will be a detriment to the neighboring properties, because we're happy to supplement the native vegetation around the garden. Like I said, this will act as a buffer to the wetland and the properties to the south, which are already all improved with residences. The benefit really can't be achieved by some other means, as relocating the garden is just not practical, as I said, because of the tree canopy. And the pool and associated structures are outside variance jurisdiction. We don't feel that the variances requested are substantial, and the majority of the improvements are outside variance jurisdiction, with the exception of the garden fencing. And we don't think it'll have an adverse impact on the physical or environmental condition. We're happy to add a covenant that there's no fertilizer or pesticides. We agree that leaders and gutters should be installed in the sheds. We'll utilize the chlorine reducing sanitation system on the pool. We're happy to add the dry well at least 100 feet from the wetlands for the swimming pool. And we're also happy to submit a revegetation plan prior to the issuance of a building permit to supplement the existing vegetation. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Tara. Ed, some questions?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question is that in the TAM where we're given that the pool is 520 feet, and I looked at the survey and it says it is 14 by 30, 520 feet, although Ms. Burke said that it's been reduced to 420, or from 512 to 420. Is that something that I'm missing a document here? Can we clear up how that is? The TAM does not reflect the 420 square foot pool that was referenced in Ms. Burke's presentation. Does anyone know? Looking at the dates of these things, what's going on with
Well, let's see, 14 by 30 is the 420, the revised size, correct, Tara?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's 420 square feet.
So it's just the TAM then. It's just the TAM that had it at 500. Okay.
And originally it was at 512 apparently, right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Right.
We reduced it.
Yeah.
We based on this comments from the initial TAM, we reduced the size of the pool.
Mhm. Ed, go ahead. Some more questions, Ed, or?
Well, I think the retaining wall beyond seems, and I've heard the explanation of how it's going to be installed and all from above, from the pool, from the house side of it, which is the only way it really could be done without doing other kind of potential damage. And I think that area will be fairly sensitive if this was to move forward with an approval, because when you're there, you certainly realize that there is some topography there, and the topography could create an awkward situation. I think it was addressed in the remarks by Ms. Burke, but I think the board will certainly be interested to know that the construction protocols will allow for that safety there. And then I do think that the native garden, while it's very handsome, it's really a question of really setbacks at this point when you're there. I don't disagree that it's been done very well and that it's obviously shown some care in the property. But we do have a fairly steep decline down to Peters Pond, and we are still looking at the idea that this is not nearly far enough away on a setback. But other than that, I think these are the real questions. You know, those two areas. That's for me anyway.
Thank you, Ed. Terry, any questions?
Terry, you're
Terry,
muted.
Yeah, Terry, you're muted. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yes, I visited the property also, and it is pretty dramatic when you actually go there and walk around it. I have concerns about the topology. And I know the pool meets all the setbacks, but I do have concerns about the construction of the pool and runoff down to Peters Run, even though it's about, it shows on the survey being 114.7 feet from there. The construction protocol of it and how that is not going to have runoff and even future runoff, considering, the climate, the way it has been. And it disturbs me a bit that there's a house on the lot, as we know, that house sits so much lower, even though it may not be directly near the pool, that I'm concerned if there could possibly be runoff in that direction, that southeasterly direction also, due to the pool construction. I guess I'll need Michael to make a comment on that.
Okay, any other questions, board members?
I just have one clarification. In the conditions, it calls for the shed gutters and leaders to run to drywall, but I think there were some pictures of gutters and drywalls on the main house, and I just want a clarification that they all terminate into drywalls.
Is that for me?
Yeah, Tara, yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's town code requirement that you can't have any runoff from your property off site, right? So we're more than happy to ensure that everything goes into dry wells. I know he had some ideas and dreams about doing rain cisterns. But if we can't do that, then we're happy to put it into dry wells. That's not a sticking point for us.
I don't think I would be opposed to rain cisterns, but that,
Well, it shows the cistern on the survey.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Okay. I didn't pick that up. Hold on.
But it sounds like it's not being used.
It's just that we saw there were in the pitch photos, there's leaders running lengthwise along the ground, and it looks like they're right there. It's
right
running
there.
down the slope. So I think it would be important for that to be terminated and not run down and controlled. So
I
whether it goes
agree.
into
That's not a problem.
a cistern or dry well, I'm not concerned about that. I don't think.
Okay, great. Tara, we can let Tyler speak, but maybe you could think about it. I'm curious how you feel about the proposed scenic easement, and also how you feel about some additional revegetation at the northwest corner of the property where maybe it's a little thin. But why don't we listen to Tyler, and then we can come back and talk to you more, okay?
Sure.
Great. Okay. Tyler, are you there?
Evening, board members. Mike Delalio for the planning department.
Oh, Michael, I'm so sorry, Michael. Gosh, my apologies. I was just communicating with Tyler. Thanks, Michael. Michael, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Good evening.
Evening, board members. So the property that we've been discussing tonight, as we heard, is on the corner of Fairview Avenue and Gloucester. The property backs up to Peters Run. Peters Run runs from the golf course to Lake Montauk. So, properties in and around the area that border it, development on these properties can have significant impacts that far extend beyond the property boundaries. There are a couple of concerns with this application. It has improved since its initial submission. I do think that there are still some, a few issues. Number one being some of the clearing concerns, and I kind of want to address those first. Now, while the current owners have maintained a native garden, and that's what they're asking for the clearing or the NRSP for, and the variance for the fencing to remain 50 feet from the wetlands, and we can all kind of applaud them for that it's a native garden. These things run with the land, and the next owners may not be the same, hold it to the same level. It may be completely cleared in the future. The fencing may extend further. So there are concerns with this, especially on such a steep slope. I think member Johann's photos are pretty significant to show, especially this one here, to show that change in grade, and how this, this area, the cleared area where the path was there, now, new, or it's been there for a while, what can happen with runoff in the area. This can all lead directly down to Peters Run. The previous certificate of occupancy tells a little bit of a different story in terms of clearing. There was clearing over here. I don't think it was extensive, especially where the garden is now. And that's definitely a consideration there. Even though there was a significantly larger buffer along this slope, that really helped to protect those wetlands. So those are definitely things to consider in terms of the existing clearing, the existing fencing that's on the lot. There are some other concerns with the ability to kind of fit this pool in that flat spot. It does drop off pretty significantly. The board should discuss whether or not this lot is appropriate to have a pool on it of this size. Maybe they could narrow it up even further, so that it could be in more of a more within the cleared area. The clearing calculations are proposed to go within 30 square feet. And keep in mind that these clearing regulations, they're for pretty much every property. They don't really take into the clearing calculations, don't take into consideration properties that back up to or contain wetlands. And those properties really should be held to a higher standard in terms of their overall clearing. When you notice the difference in the clearing from the previous CO, this area over here looks like it was kind of, vegetated to a degree. And in the photos that member Johan has, it looks like, and I think it was mentioned in the assessment, it looks like those are Alberta spruces in there. Potentially some ornamentals, of fountain grass or so, which are non-native and can be a little invasive. The area has also been maintained, kind of as cleared. Let me just get back to it. There's no leaf litter, there's no canopy. It's been continued to kind of be, kept up. So this kind of, even though it's marked as uncleared on the survey, this area really is cleared. And that really needs to be beefed up. We should get a formal plan for these areas, the area around the garden where they relocated the fencing so that they could improve the clearing, I'm guessing was the desire here. But you still have this gap where the fencing used to be. We haven't gotten a plan on that. The revegetation plan from Grimes that we do have is really for the area behind the retaining wall. So there are definitely some concerns for the board to discuss, in terms of this application, and if it's, this level of development is appropriate, this level of clearing is appropriate on a parcel that could have, far-reaching impacts to to Lake Montauk, which is a, kind of a constrained and troubled water body that we have that, within the town that, suffers from a lot of problems, albeit from, a lot of development and clearing that went on prior to environmental regulation by the town, a lot of antiquated sanitary systems. So these are just things, for the board to consider in terms of their discussion of this application on, and does this fit the standards worth granting a natural resource special permit for the pool and the patio, in addition to the variance request for the garden and fencing.
Thank you, Michael. Board members, any questions? Ed, you want to start off for Michael?
Yeah, I'm following up on that last photo that Michael had. There was that I guess that's the northeast corner, Michael.
Correct.
There's some replanting has gone on there. Michael identified the evergreens as Alberta spruce, which of course are not native. And now there's concern that the grasses are probably not as well, or definitely not as well. And that little area there would, of course, require attention. I know that Ms. Burke said that they were willing to do what had to be done. This would be something I think the board would want to know, that I certainly would want to know, that would get their attention. And then additionally, there was a discussion that you raised, Mr. Chair, of whether or not an easement could be applied to the area that sits below where it is the native garden now. I think it was suggested on the drawing that Michael Delalio had. There it is. and
Yeah.
whether or not the client would be, or the applicant would be willing to agree to this easement as well as revegetating in the front as part of remediation, or at least an offer on their part to show that that area would be protected in perpetuity. So I think that I'd like to get a reaction from Ms. Burke on both of those issues.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Any other questions for Michael, board members?
No, I mean, I still have a concern about the proposed pool and the patio. It's a lot of hardscape, and again, the direction of anything that's going to run off this property is going to be going into Peter's Run, and which, of course, as we all know, runs into Lake Montauk, and I'm very concerned about, water quality in the long term with this.
Okay, thanks, Terry. I'll just mention, not really a question to Michael, and thank you, Michael, for your work on this. Just to Tara, as you know, we are going to hold the written record open until 2 weeks after the transcript is posted on the town's website. So instead of putting you on the spot, you have time to submit amended information to the written record. And I'll tell you what I would feel much more comfortable about is, as Michael mentioned, in the future, if this house were sold, all of that square footage of the native garden can really be, would be considered clearing, especially if it is cleared out more than it is now. And I know they do seem to be good stewards of their property to an extent. There is a lot of clearing on the property already. It's a very dense property. And this obviously makes it more dense as far as structures and its accessory structures and coverage and clearing and all that. So I would really like to see you, after discussing with the applicant, come back and consider the scenic easement, and as well taking about the square footage of that garden where on the survey it says native garden, and turning that 90 degrees and doing that amount of a really thorough, and as Michael said, all of these would have a plan submitted, doing a real thorough revegetation of that northwestern corner, and as well, obviously filling in, as Michael suggested, where the fence is moved, so that there'd be a submitted full site revegetation plan that would also include what you're doing over by the retaining wall. So that's kind of my comment for you to consider, okay, with the applicant.
Okay.
Any questions for Tara, or before and we'll give her a chance to make a final comment or comments? Board members, any questions for Tara or Michael?
No.
No? Okay, Tara, final comments, Tara?
Thank you, first of all, board members, for your comments, and Michael, I really appreciate it. And we are listening, and we do take it seriously. So I fully understand where each one of you is coming from with your concerns. We can certainly submit a written response in the next 2 weeks. My only concern with submitting, a full-blown revegetation plan in the next 2 weeks would be that everybody is swamped right now, and getting anything from anyone of design professional status in 2 weeks is somewhat impossible in May.
Tara, if I could just jump in, as far as a solution for that, we know everyone's busy, but we keep it open for 2 weeks until after the transcript is posted, and I have no problem if you were not ready. If the written record had to be extended, council can comment on this. But in other words, if the transcript came back very quickly in a week, and then it was 2 weeks, and the 3 weeks total wasn't enough for you, I'm fine with giving you the time you need to come back with this myself.
Okay, thank you.
Council, does that work? Council, if
Yeah,
you would
we
have to.
generally would close the record, but Tara, other applicants, because of delay and something that they need to submit, have simply put in a letter requesting additional time to keep the record open.
Yeah.
And we bring that to the board's attention. And in most cases, I think in almost every case, they've granted the extension of time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Nancy. That would be the way
Thank you.
to go, if you would, Tara.
Okay, great. I think, just to to add to what everyone's saying, just so you know, before, I leave this meeting and you don't see me face to face with the next submission, I think we would certainly be willing to revise the vegetation in the northeast corner. I understand the concerns, and we can, supplement that or remove and replace and put a better revegetation plan in that area. That we are proposing the pool and the patio, which is additional hardscaping that didn't exist for sure. But I also think this is an opportunity for the board to get some more vegetation on this property. The CO, the vegetation on the CO was 371 feet within the allowable clearing. So that was pretty close to the allowable. And what I had said before, just revegetating around the garden and the path down to Peters Run alone is roughly 1,000 square feet. So this is an opportunity to get some more vegetation on this lot for the board. And, we're happy to submit something of quality that would make the planning department and the board, happy with it meeting the clearing requirements.
Yeah, thank you. I would say give it your best shot, because I understand what you're saying, but obviously you can see the concern, with the pool and the patio and the hardscape and the adjacency to, and the slopes and the adjacency to Peters Run. So I'd say, give it your best shot with the applicant, come back to us, and then we can take a look at it and make our decisions.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Tara. Ed, and thanks, Michael Delalio. If there's no more comments, Ed, would you like to close this out, please?
Yes, Mr.
Yes, for
Chair.
the public?
Oh, geez, I'm so sorry. Michael, thanks, Terry. Michael at LTV, do we have anyone on the line?
Hi, Chair. No, we don't have anyone waiting for this. There are people waiting for upcoming hearings, but there are none for this.
Okay, thank you. And for all those people waiting, I will ask to interrupt our meeting for a second here, that if you are waiting to be on the next public hearing, if you're not going to be on the Dr. Bonnie Maslin, please hang up the phone until your hearing is well underway and we're doing the field report, so that the lines don't get confused on who's waiting for which public hearing. So that's for the public. Thank you. Okay, and thank you, Tara and Michael. And Ed, if you make a motion, Ed, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion to close the public hearing for Gerard Cotillo of 7 Gloucester Avenue, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-19-7-1, but to leave the written record open until 2 weeks after the transcript for this meeting is posted online.
Second.
Concur.
And I concur as well. Thank you all and have a good evening.
Thank you, Tara.
I should mention, I neglected to mention that board member Tim Brenneman is not with us this evening. He will be back next week, though. Okay, we'll move on to our next public hearing this evening. We have Dr. Bonnie Maslin is the applicant, and the lot size and location is 19,334 square feet total at 307 Kings Point Road and contiguous to the surface waters of Gardner's Bay, Clearwater Beach, number 2715, Section 1, Lot 42, Springs, tax map number 300-24-1-11. The description, the in-place reconstruction of an approximately 90 linear foot stone armor revetment on a parcel of land containing coastal bluffs, beaches, and tidal surface waters. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the town code and any other relief necessary. This is in a B residence zone. The flood zone is X and the secret class is type 2. And council, do we have a proper affidavit of service and posting?
We
Please.
have a affidavit that mailings were done on the 23rd of April, and the postings were also done on the 23rd of April. So the paperwork appears to be in order.
Okay, thank you, Council. Okay, this is in Vice Chair Roy Delene's Springs District. Roy, if you would, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just started my screen share, and I have the first photo is a photo of the posting, properly posted. This is the house that we're talking about, and again, this application is about a revetment replacement. So I'm going to walk kind of quickly into the backyard. This is the sidewalk that's going towards the backyard on the west side. Now this is looking at the backyard, and you can see the stairs that are part of the application. There's a platform on top of the stairs. Might have a question with planning about that, but the stairs will have to be partially removed while they replace the revetment. Again, taking a look at over across the bay, and I'm now going to give you a kind of a view of the 360 kind of view of the neighborhood. Again, this is a photo of the beginning of the stairs and the platform at the top of the stairs. Looking back at the house in question, this is a view looking west along the neighborhood. Again, I'm going to scan along now across the water. You can see the stone revetment down below. This is the stairs leading down to to the beach. Looking now towards the northeast, you can see the neighbor stairs. Now looking to east, and then that's the neighbor's house to the east. And there's a photo now. I'm going to take a closer look at the revetment. You can see where they're talking about the degradation of what they're talking about, the revetment and some slipping of the slope. There's a photo of the neighbors. Looks like they did a bluff restoration as well. Now down towards the beach, you can take a look, looking west. The TAM refers to about 20 feet of this, about 20 feet of this revetment going onto the neighbor's property. And I think we have to question whether or not that's contained in this application or not, as the TAM suggests. This is looking at
Where's the 20 feet? Is that at the far end of that picture?
It's at the far end, Terry. So this would be the neighboring house up here. So this would be approximately, I think it's approximately about that far.
Okay.
Taking a close look at the top of the revetment. And then along the revetment as a whole. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Roy, for that. Board members, any questions for Roy on his field report there? No? Okay. Then we will hear from the applicant or the applicant's agent. I believe is Lori with us?
Lori's on the phone, so you can have her unmuted. And then Drew Bennett is also here by Zoom. So we can do both and be on at the same time, but we will need both of them sworn in.
Sworn in, yep. Okay, well, why don't we unmute both of them, and I can swear them in once at a time. Let's see. I don't see Laura. Is Lori with us?
She's on the phone, so you just need to ask Mike to bring her
I just don't see. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. I don't see her name. Mike, LTV, could you let her in, please? Or
yes,
whatever?
yes. Chair, I'll unmute on that line. The last 4 digits are 8500.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi there.
Hi. Good evening, Lori. How are you? Can you hear us?
Good, thanks. How you doing?
Great.
Can I what?
No, I asked if you can hear us. I'm sure you can.
I can hear you.
Excellent. Okay, Laura, I'll swear you in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Excellent. Okay, go ahead, Lori.
So the existing revetment was granted ZBA approval in 1993, which is about 2 years after the Halloween storm. We submitted some pictures to the record that basically show the damage that can be done to an unprotected bluff next to a bulkhead when a storm like that hits. Anyhow, that was nearly 30 years ago. In October of 2019, we submitted letters to the file from First Coastal, Rambo, and Drew Bennett, stating that the revetment was failing. We are now before you for an expedited natural resources special permit to reconstruct the revetment in place and in kind to prevent the continuous overwash that is causing the bluff crest to erode. The
Lori,
TAM
I'm going to
February of
interrupt.
20.
Lori, I'm interrupting for a second. Do you want something on the screen? Like, I'm just thinking it's kind of nice to have something like the survey or something. Do you want the planners to bring up anything on the screen? Or Drew may want
They
something.
could
I don't
put
know.
the project. There's a Drew Bennett's
Yeah.
plan could be up on the screen.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
submitted a, can you hear me?
Yeah, good evening, Drew. I'll go ahead and
Yep.
swear you in right away, Drew. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thanks. Nice to see you, Drew. Go ahead.
So we had filed a plan that I prepared that's dated September 16th, 2019. I think that that would be a good plan to pull up as Lori goes through her opening remarks.
Okay, Brian, could you pull that up, Brian, if you please? Great. Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Okay, go ahead, Lori.
So the TAM from February of 2020 does not discourage reconstruction of the revetment and acknowledges that the backfill material above the existing revetment has been lost. The TAM concludes that the proposed action does not result in any potentially large or significant adverse impacts. I am joined tonight by the project team, all of whom are prepared to present. They include, Drew, you're muted. They include Drew Bennett on the engineering and design, Aram Terturian on the coastal geology of this area, our client Bonnie Maslin, and her attorney Nika Strunk on the legal aspects of the project. Drew, I turn it over to you, and the plan is on the screen.
Okay, but before we do, Lori, just to remind you that we typically give you, the agent, 10 minutes of time, and we give consultants 3 minutes. So Kyle does have a little bit of not a little, he has got a timer. So I'm going to ask everyone, we have all of your submitted documentation. And so you have a limited amount of time. So please keep it to.
I've just introduced the project and the team, and they're going to make their short presentations. So
Okay,
I'm giving
then
up my 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll give some time for them. Let's hear from Drew. Go ahead, Drew, if you please. If Drew was meant to speak first.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Drew Bennett, consulting engineer, doing business at 74 Montauk Highway in East Hampton. And I have performed a number of inspections over the years of the existing revetment. And I am the person who prepared the plan that we're all looking at on the screen this evening. The last inspection I did of the revetment was on April 24th, 2021. So there is approximately 90 linear feet of existing rock revetment that we're proposing to basically restack to its existing condition. The revetment is a legally pre-existing stone structure located in East Hampton Town Coastal Erosion Zone Overlay Zone number 4, where structures already exist and can be rightly maintained. This revetment was designed and constructed in 1993 in response to the 1991 Halloween storm, which totally devastated Bonnie's Bluff. She's on the end of a long line of vertical bulkhead. Roy's photographs showed the neighbor to the east, immediately to the east, has a very large vertical bulkhead, and the Maslin suffer from, end of bulkhead scour. So without protection, her bluff would be devastated, and she suffered many damages over the years. This project is relatively straightforward. It's basically to reconstruct an existing revetment. The existing conditions of the stone are that the revetment's made up of basically 3 types of stone. There's bedding stone, which is small, and then there's sub-armor stone, which is a little bit larger, and then there's armor stone, which is on the face of it. And so what's happening with this particular revetment, which is now about 28 years old, is that it is decaying from behind. So the armor stone, which you see on the face in the photographs, is beginning to shift, but there's actually voids that are now opening up behind the revetment, the rocks. And as a result, we're getting settling on the top, and the armor stone is beginning to settle in height. So the design elevation, I think, was somewhere around 9 feet above mean sea level. There's a cavity that's forming in sections on top of the revetment, and there's also cavities behind it where water is now deeply penetrating the face of the armor stone and actually eroding from behind the armor stone. So the purpose of this project is basically to take it apart and reset it properly, just like it was originally constructed 28 years ago, with applying filter fabric, bringing in some supplemental bedding stone, again, the small stone, and then adding some sub-armor stone, reusing all the stone that's there, but supplementing it somehow, or in addition to. We may need a couple additional armor stones. That needs to be determined once we take it apart. The slope and the top elevation will be set back as originally approved in 1993. And above it, or landward above the revetment, we propose to place sand and replant it once that becomes stable. This project is very similar to what the town of East Hampton did to the easterly breakwater at 3 Mile Harbor Inlet, where the stone breakwater on the east side of the inlet was quite old and began to settle and spread and was no longer effective at preventing sand and waves from washing through it, filling in the inlet. So it's a maintenance type of activity, and I believe it's basically a matter of right, as I understand it. I can go through the construction protocol. Basically, access will come from Clearwater Beach property owners' beach access. They'll drive down the beach. Materials will be stored in the parking lot. We'll salvage all the rock for reuse. If we need to add some additional rock, we'll bring it in from the parking lot. And the rest of it, I think I pretty much covered already. So in the interest of time, I will turn it over to anyone else who would like to make a few more comments or answer any questions.
I have just a quick one, and then I should let Roy go first, but just a quick one. As far as the top of the bluff, of the revetment, and you mentioned, bringing in additional fill and doing a re-veg. Would you do it with the jute and do I hope you'd be doing a very serious job there with that. Could you just talk about what you do at the top?
Sure, above the stone, obviously, we would bring in clean sand to make a nice steady slope of approximately 1 on 1.5, 1 on 2, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then use jute matting and beach grass to stabilize it. And typically the beach grass is planted 12 to 18 inches on center. Mm-hmm. And would be planted at the appropriate time so it survives. So like this time of year is an ideal time. If we can't do it soon, the fall is also a good planting season for it. So mm-hmm. I think the Maslins have certainly wanted to look nice and to survive, and that's very important to them. So.
Thank you. That's what I was looking to hear. That sounds good, Drew. The last question. I imagine the filter fabric is going down first, and then the small bedding stone on top.
Yeah. So just like we did with the east breakwater, mm-hmm. we'll pull the stones off. Yeah. There may be some old filter fabric that's still there. We'll gather it up and dispose of it. We'll put down a new layer of filter fabric. We'll put back the small bedding stone, the sub-armor stone, and then the armor stone. We'll just basically reassemble it, same slope, same height, etc.
Okay, thank you, Drew. Any questions for Drew while he's here, board members, while he's on?
Sure, I have a couple. My one question, I did have a question on the face of the bluff. I believe that's been adequately answered. Drew, there was a question in the TAM about whether or not this bluff replacement extends onto the neighboring property. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. And I don't know if there's someone else on the team that can respond to that. Let me just see here. So I don't know the history. I wasn't around in 1993 when they constructed it. There are rocks that appear to extend. Let's see. I want to get my directions correct. West, right? West toward the Hog Creek Inlet. So I My understanding was that that was the neighbor's revetment, but I don't know that for a fact. So I shouldn't speak to that. Maybe there's someone else on the team that can.
Well, what we know is we cannot apply to rebuild a revetment that's on someone else's property. So,
Right.
no, it's not part of our proposed project.
Right. So the project is the 90 linear feet that is the front property line of the Maslins. What occurs to the west toward Hog Creek Inlet, I believe, is a separate revetment. They're intertwined, and we would make sure that they go back together so that they maintain a continuous space similar to what they have now. But we wouldn't. The scope is not to take apart or reconstruct the neighbor's revetment.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll have, Chairman, I'll have some questions for the planning department regarding the top of the bluff, the platform, and proper buffer on the top of the bluff. But for now, I have enough. That's enough questions for now.
Okay, thank you, Roy. Anyone else? Any other board members?
Yeah, just a quick one. It says it's an in-place reconstruction, so there'll be no change in dimensions of any sort of it. Just replace it.
That's correct. That's the intent. That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see, Lori, who's next? Are we going to hear from Rick or the architect?
Aaron Peturian?
Excuse
from
me,
Aaron.
Chair.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong list. Pardon me. Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Excuse me, Chair. So I was given in advance numbers pertaining to those individuals, which I don't have actually in the caller, as if they've not called in yet. I do have one number I don't know that I can unmute and see if it pertains.
Yeah, go
to
ahead.
this.
Let's do that. Maybe
right.
that's Aaron.
The
Yeah.
caller's last four digits are 2271. I'll unmute that right now.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Aram Tertunian, First Coastal Corporation, West Hampton Beach, New York, on behalf of the applicant. Thank you for.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Thank you. We picked the right number. Good job, Mike. Aaron, I'll swear you in if you please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, good evening. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for the time to speak this evening. I think that Mr. Bennett gave you a very comprehensive overview of the activities that are proposed on the site. I would just like to provide some background on the physical forces and the state of the property vis-a-vis the appropriateness of rebuilding this revetment. This is a headland area. Most, if not every property for approximately a mile is already been stabilized with bulkheads or other hard structures. That's because as a headland, it's constantly eroding. There's no back and forth the way you would see, for example, on an ocean beach. In this situation, the bluff always erodes. And you saw in the photos that were provided to the board what happened after Halloween, and had Dr. Maslin not taken the action that she did, it's likely that a substantial portion of the property would already be gone, and even the house would be endangered. So I would say that Mr. Bennett's design is appropriate to the physical forces acting on the area, and that his method of construction conforms to standard and accepted principles of engineering and construction, and that the revetment is the most practicable alternative is to rebuild this revetment as described by Mr. Bennett. Happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Roy?
No questions.
Okay, any other board members?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is probably addressed to Mr. Bennett, but anytime an effort like this is made, one of the critical factors is maintenance of this revetment over a period of time. Now, this was put in '93, and there was not regular maintenance. We see the condition it's in now. If this is to be rebuilt, is there a plan in place by which this would regularly be monitored and repairs made as needed, rather than this massive repair which was needed now? This goes on in revetments we see throughout the town in Montauk. We see what's going on at the lighthouse right now with that huge job that has to continually be maintained. So that would be a concern of mine if this was to be approved, to know that there is some effort going to be made to see to it that you can maintain this over a long period of time.
I have to jump in and say that's an excellent question, Ed. Thank you for asking that. Go
Sure.
ahead, Drew.
So I've worked with the Maslins for over 8 years, and I've done probably 6 or so inspections of the revetment. We've had a number of applications into the board to make various improvements. This maintenance activity, I think, was filed back in September of 2019, and we're finally getting to a hearing with the zoning board. So this is a very important protection for the Maslins. It's a very important asset to the Maslins, and just like they've done over the last 8 years, I would expect them to continue to monitor it and make repairs and ask for permission to make repairs and maintenance when needed. 28 years is a pretty good run for this revetment. We would expect somewhere between 30, 35, something like that. So we want to take it apart before it falls apart. And so this is not unusual. And I wouldn't say that it's a defective design to begin with. It's basically standard practice. And the only way to correct the bedding stone is to take it apart and reset it. So, so to answer your question, of course, we'll continue to monitor it and request for maintenance when needed.
Thank you, Drew. Good question, good answer. Thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead, Lori.
But the Bonnie Maslin is on the phone, as is her attorney, Nika Strunk, and both would like to speak.
Okay. Thank you, Lori. Mike, would you please unmute that unless board members have any other questions for Drew or Aaron? Okay. If not, we'll go ahead and listen to hear from them.
Chair, so I did see Miss Maslin come in, but she has hung up. I don't see her, and I don't see Anika Strunk at this time.
Okay, so you have no one on the call, on the waiting list, on the call list. No one on hold.
I have 2 known numbers that are associated to an upcoming hearing only, and that's it.
Okay, they didn't hang up earlier when I asked them to. Okay.
Nope.
Okay, well, okay, then I think we can.
Actually, let me interrupt you, Chair, if I may. I do see Nika Strunk at this time.
Okay.
All right.
Please
I'll
unmute
that caller. The last 4 digits are 3781.
Thank you.
Hello.
Good evening. Would you please introduce yourself for the record? And I guess you are an attorney, so I will not have to swear you in. Would you introduce yourself and go ahead, please?
Yes, I'll introduce myself. My name is Nika Strunk. I'm an attorney in Southampton, New York at 37 Windmill Lane, and I'm representing Dr. Maslin in connection with this application. I think our plan had been for Dr. Maslin to speak before me. So if she's on the line, I will let her go ahead first.
Excuse me, Chair. She is at this time.
Okay.
Okay, good.
All right. I'll
Please unmute
caller.
that.
Sure. The phone numbers end in 0303.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct.
Southampton, New York at 30.
Sorry.
Excuse me, caller with the last 4 digits 0303.
Hi.
Miss Maslin, you're on.
Yes, that is okay. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Doctor. Someone has to shut a TV off, please, in the background, or turn something off.
Yes,
Dr. Maslin, I will introduce you. I will introduce yourself, and then I will swear you in, please.
of course.
If you would introduce yourself for the record, your name and address, please.
Yes, I'm Dr. Bonnie Maslin. I live at 307 Kings Point Road, East Hampton, New York.
Thank you. And do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Excellent. Go ahead, please.
Hello. First, I want to say that as a 50-year resident of this wonderful town of ours, I am very appreciative of the work that you currently as a board have done and the boards that I have seen in action for many, many decades. So I thank you for the stewardship that you show for our beautiful town. I feel extraordinarily blessed to live in this wonderful community of Springs, and my 5 decades of living in the Springs, mostly 5 in the Springs, I've tried my best to be a good neighbor. I've been active in community matters. In fact, I broke the record of selling the most clam chowder ever in the history of the Springs Fair. And that's really something because I don't even eat clam chowder. And most important, what I want you to know is that and I think you can hear this in my voice, even though you don't see me. I've really worked toward being a guardian of our beautiful town, in sync with what I think all of you folks are doing, and a good steward of my property. I respectfully appreciate the time to speak with you and respectfully ask you to allow me to secure my home and property as has been described by this wonderful team that I work with. So I thank you, board, for doing what you do, and I've seen many boards who have done this work that you've done, and I'm really appreciative of it. I want this town to stay the town it is, and I want to be part of that, but I do need help, and I hope you will give that to me by allowing me to rebuild in kind without any changes, but build back better a revetment to protect my family. And by the way, I'm now a full-time resident, and so it's really important to me. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you for joining us this evening. Do we have another, did we have someone else on this, Laurie, who wanted to get on? Oh, we're speaking with the attorney. I beg your pardon. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. Nika Strunk again. So I'd just like to speak briefly to the process here and to the code provisions that apply. We have submitted an application for an expedited administrative natural resources special permit pursuant to section 255-4-28 of your code, which provides in subsection A3 the repair or reconstruction in place and in kind of a lawfully pre-existing erosion control structure in coastal erosion overlay zone 4 of the coastal erosion overlay district. So that is exactly us. So the expedited administrative natural resources special permit, it's our position this should have been processed under that process. That application was submitted on October 15th, 2019, and there are procedures for that type of application that are contained in section 255-8-84 of the town code. And it provides in subsection 4, which is specific to this type of application, that the planning department shall either issue an administrative natural resources special permit or within 5 days, refer the matter to the Zoning Board of Appeals in accordance with the procedures for all other administrative natural resources special permits. So that 5-day period, unfortunately, did not happen. It was about 4 months until a referral was made to this board. I don't really know the reason that a referral was made to this board. The code does provide certain reasons for referral to the board in subsection J of the same section 255-8-84, and none of those apply. It's our position that this is a matter of right. It's rebuilding in kind and in place in the coastal erosion overlay district zone 4, and it really should have been approved when it was first submitted. We were taken straight into COVID and the shutdown, and it's been some time since we've been able to regroup as a team to come before you. But it's our position that this is a matter of right and should be granted, and certainly as far as the technical aspects that were reviewed in the technical assessment memo, I don't see any grounds given for denying the application. So I'd respectfully submit that the application should be granted.
Okay, thank you for joining us this evening. Okay, let's see. Let's go now to the planning department. Brian Frank.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. Brian Frank from planning department.
Good evening, Brian. I'll go ahead and swear you in. Brian, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead, please.
Well, if you've reviewed the assessment, you're aware that the planning department does not object to the in-place and kind reconstruction of the revetment. I do want to place the application in the context of the physical environment. There are some complexities with the access, just to show you where we're talking about. The Maslin property is highlighted in blue. The Maslins have been a long time, or Dr. Maslin has been a long time owner of this property. The revetment was approved in 1993. There have been several other applications to the zoning board for enlargements to the residence and the construction of the deck at the top of the bluff over the years. The construction access is proposed to come from the Clearwater Beach Property Owners Association, which is located about 1,800 feet thereabouts to the west of the property, and use the beach for access to disassemble the stairs that traverse the revetment, disassemble and reconstruct the revetment. One thing I do want to bring to your attention a little bit is this is a fairly stable area of shoreline. There is a strong littoral flow of sand from east to west. This is an area of stability and even accretion. The Clearwater jetty holds the sand in this area. And you can see the Maslins are near the end of the hardened portion of the shoreline of Kings Point. Aram's correct. Kings Point is headland. Most of that headland is armored, and there's no beach to speak of. The shore hardening becomes a lot more intermittent and disappears entirely just a little bit west of the applicant's property. I became familiar with this property in 2013 when an earlier application to build a more elaborate erosion control structure was submitted to the zoning board. That application was abandoned. Another application was submitted to enlarge the application, and that had been scheduled for a hearing in 2018. That was pulled from the calendar and replaced with the in-place application. This application had been scheduled for a public hearing in March of 2020. The COVID lockdown suspended everything, and it's kind of been in a holding pattern since then. It is, although this is an accretional area, anytime you are adjacent to a hard structure, you're vulnerable to scour erosion. If the revetment weren't here, there probably would be additional scour as a result of the hardened structure to the west, which the board may remember is the Malinzak property that the board discussed for a reconstruction of that bulkhead over the winter. And the fact that properties adjacent to hard structures are vulnerable to erosion themselves is often referred to as the domino effect, and why the board has to be cautious about when they approve new erosion control structures, because they do create changes to the coastal dynamics for the adjoining property owners, or even in enlargements of the revetment. This property, I do have some photos from over the years. I became familiar, as I said, I became familiar with this property after Sandy. This photo is from 2016 in, no, sorry. This is the western terminus of the Maslin property, and this is the adjoining property to the east. The Maslin property was overtopped during Hurricane Sandy. It removed some of the material between the top of a revetment and the bluff crest. It did the same on the adjoining property to the west, a number of the adjoining properties to the west. Those properties had replaced the sand, used jute matting and beach grass, and they've been pretty stable since then. A permit was issued to the Maslins to replace the sand above the revetment. That permit wasn't acted on, so the property is largely in a very similar condition as it was in 2013. I do think while it's fair to call the revetment settling, as Drew mentioned, 28 years is a pretty good run for a coastal erosion structure. Nothing lasts forever, and it's reasonable to expect that to need to be repaired. But I would respectfully disagree with characterizing it as failing. There's an awful lot of multi-ton stone in place there. It may be a bit of semantics because nobody is arguing against the reconstruction of the bulk of the revetment. But the enlargement of the revetment would impact the adjoining property and possibly cause a cascade of similar applications. And again, this is an area where you do have some resource. You do have more natural bluffs or dunes. You do have a well-developed beach. You do have this area used by the protected shorebirds, and that's the reason for the no construction window that's recommended in the assessment. And a lot of what we do in coastal planning is to prevent, a further loss or degradation of the resource. So as an in-place reconstruction, if the revetment is constructed to its existing dimensions, 9 feet above sea level, the toe isn't bumped out any seaward, the planning department agrees that it meets the natural resource special permit standards. It is, strongly advisable to add sand above the revetment and fill in that escarpment that occurred above the revetment between the bluff crest and stabilize that as the adjoining properties have. That adds to the integrity of the revetment. It also improves the habitat for coastal species. I think the best this is probably the best the best photo of the property. This is an oblique aerial image from 2018. This is Malinzac to the west. This is Maslin with the blue borders around it. You can see a little bit of the shadow between the bluff crest and the top of the revetment where that escarpment is. And you can see the adjoining property 2 lots over is unarmored. There are a couple of properties further to the west that have some short bulkheads, but then the beach is natural. The decks that you see here and some of these staircases, and you'll see more decks sometimes seaward of the bluff crest as you go further west, are indicative of the stability of this area. Beyond that, I'll just make myself available if the members have any questions. I do think to say that it's continually overwashed, I don't really think that's supported by my visits to the property and the photos that I've taken in 2013, 16, and 20. But again, as an in-place replacement, the planning department believes it meets the NRSP standards.
Okay.
As Ms. Struck had mentioned, it is in Coastal Erosion Overlay District Zone 4, where the repair of those structures is permitted. Again, because of the 1,800 linear feet of travel that's necessary along the beach and other properties, the planning department did not think this was an appropriate candidate to give an expedited administrative natural resources special permit to and referred it to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Brian, for all your work on this and for your comments. Board members, any questions for Brian while he's got the mic?
No, Brian, I just want to address in this, you can see this photo, you have decks on the crest of the bluff, which normally isn't allowed in the town code. Can you just address that and also address the need for a buffer on the top of the bluff?
There is a bit of a buffer here, and the Maslins have been good stewards of this. Yeah. You don't see it very well reflected in this photo, and I have so many photos. I have to admit I did a bad job preparing for this hearing. I do have photos in 2013 that shows how robust the bayberry is that goes up to the landward corner of the deck, but this deck was granted the variances to be in this location.
Okay.
I believe the adjoining properties have similar histories.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to ask Brian, looking at this photo, It looks as if there is the condition of the vegetation on the Maslin property is significantly different than the one directly to the west.
Yeah.
It looks quite concave and as if there's going to have to be a need for a fair amount of fill if you want to get back to the slope that we see to the westerly property. Is that the case when you're standing there? Does it look as if we're talking about a massive amount of fill to fill in behind this new improved revetment?
It's a significant amount of fill. I wouldn't call it massive, but this property did the exact same thing after Sandy. And I believe it was, it may have been Lori's office that handled that application as well. But the same thing happened here. We all know that Sandy was a historic storm in terms of its effect on the coastline. These revetments were overtopped. The unarmored property was badly escarped. And there are a lot of photographs in the planning department's files of both of those properties, both before the work went on and immediately after the restoration and even years later. So you would expect a similar volume of sand with a similar slope. This one was covered with a jute matting, and the beach grass was planted within the matting. And it was done in the spring. It really went by the book in terms of how you want to do a coastal restoration, and it's almost a poster child of a how-to in terms of the way it was approached, implemented, and you know, the results speak for itself. This is 2018, but I expect it looks similar now. I haven't been to the property to either of these properties since 2020.
I'll just add that I was there this afternoon, and Ed, to your point, yeah, and Roy can attest, it's incredible how well that was done to the west, and even the small portion that's being done to the east above the bulkhead, obviously, with the jute mat. So that's why I was glad to hear Drew's response. And I think they intend to kind of hold that same level of coastal restoration there. I think it will be quite a bit of sand, Ed, from what I saw and what Roy saw, but it's in the end, it'll be better in the end, I'm sure, if this is approved and done properly. Any other questions, board members? And then we'll see if there's anyone in the public. Michael, do you have anyone in the public who wants to comment?
No, Chair, there are no other callers.
Okay. Okay, then, Roy, would you like to close this out, please?
Yes, sir.
I don't really have much to add. We've been very
sorry, Lori, I didn't give
at this.
Yeah.
What?
I didn't give you a chance. Sorry, Lori. I should have given you a chance to comment. Go ahead briefly, if you would.
Oh, I was just going to say, we've been at this a long time, really long time. As Brian pointed out, 2013 is when we first started designing protection for this property. We got a lot of pushback on extra height, additional stones, and finally just came down to, you know what, we're entitled to in-place, in-kind replacement. Let's get that done because this bluff crest is falling. So that's why we're here, and we hope you'll approve it so that this could be rebuilt and protect our property into the future.
Okay, thank you. Roy, if you would.
Mm-hmm.
Or Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to end the public hearing for Dr. Bonnie Maslin, located at 307 Kings Point Road, Suffolk Tax Map 300-024-01-0-11 until 2 weeks after the minutes have been posted to the town's website.
Is there a second?
Second.
I concur.
And I concur. Thank you, Roy. Thank you, Lori and Drew and Aram, and I apologize, the attorney's name I don't have now. Thank you all, and thank you, Brian, for your work on this. Have a good evening, you all.
I'll be on the next one.
Yeah, okay. You can stay on. Stay on, Lori. Go ahead and stay on. Okay, we'll get right into the next public hearing. The applicant is James Shanik, and the lot size and location is 1600. That doesn't make sense. It should be 16,000 square feet, I'm sure. What? Anyway. Is that the lot size? Lori?
16,000.
Yeah,
I'm
I
looking
know.
at
I said
the
it's a
survey, hang
typo.
on.
Yeah, it says 16, it's a typo. I'll move along. 16,000 square feet total at
Hang
301.
on a second, we have, so that's what's in the notice.
Yeah. Let's see, I actually have the notice, the public hearing notice. Let me just see.
Yeah, public hearing notice is 1,600.
Yeah, it is.
Well, we're
it's
not
a
trying
typo.
to change that, so that shouldn't have any relevance.
It's how you have to identify the property. Well, at this point, go ahead. It may be an issue in the future, but I mean, it may be an issue. So, but no point in stopping now.
Okay, okay, hopefully we can work this out. Okay, I'll take your advice, Nancy Lynn. Again, the lot size and location, 16,000 square feet total at 301 Marine Boulevard, Beach Hampton, Section 4, lots 16 to 19, Block 7, map number 1319, Amagansett, tax map number 300-177-1-42. Description: to construct a 748 square feet of first and second story addition, 132 feet of first and second story decking, and an upgraded sanitary system within jurisdiction and setbacks of the dune crest, dune land, and beach vegetation. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-4-20 of the East Hampton Town Code, and two variances required for this application. Variances of 58.5 feet and 63.9 feet are required from 255-4-40 of the Town Code in order to construct the additions 41.5 feet and decking 36.1 feet from the dune crest, where 100-foot setbacks are required and any other relief necessary. This is in a B residence zoning district. The flood zone is a VE, velocity flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. And council, do we have a proper affidavit of service and posting?
Well, we do have, I'm just concerned about whether or not any of the notices were correct, but until that, with that possible issue unresolved, until I can look into it a little bit further. The affidavit is that mailings were done on the 23rd of April and posting was done on the 23rd of April. So that aspect of the notice appears to be in order.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy Lynn. Okay. This is in my Amagansett district, and Tyler Borsak is going to help me out, if you would. Tyler, with my field report, please. Okay. Here we are on Marine Boulevard at the entrance. It was very well posted, and that is the accessory structure. It seems like a home office or something like that. That building right there. And we are facing towards the ocean from Marine Boulevard, looking south, we'll call it. Next, please, Tyler. Here I walk to the left just to show you, see on the right side, you see that same accessory structure. This is, I think it's number 6A, station 6A access. That's probably the lifeguard station, but this is a public access, or probably, I'm not sure if it's a neighborhood group access to the beach. I just wanted to show you all that. And then Marine Boulevard ends on the left side, of that photo. And I turned around, now I'm looking west, we'll call it, along Marine, and that's Treasure Island that goes off to the right, back up to Bluff Road. Next, please, Tyler. Okay, here I've walked in, I've turned to the right. It seems like there was some like raked up pine needles. I just wanted to show you the kind of existing vegetation that's there on the right as I come in the driveway. Next, please. Now I'm kind of just turning the camera left towards that accessory structure, looking up the driveway. Next, please. Getting closer. This is a parking area that you see on your surveys. You'll note on the left, there's a walkway between the house and the accessory structure on the left side of that photo, that wooden walkway. Next, Tyler. This, I just turned to the left to show you the other side of that accessory structure. Kind of some mat grade decking there. The walkway, then I walked out looking up the walkway at the house. just to give you a sense of the vegetation that's there as well. And now here I'm back on the driveway, getting closer and just giving you a scope of the house with the ocean beyond. And this is where the proposed activity would occur. Next, please, Tyler. Just a closer shot of the house for reference. Next, and this again is the area of the house where the addition is proposed. Here I've walked over and I'm just looking down that walkway towards, well, you really don't see the excess, oh yeah, you do, but I just to show you that, and the incline, the slope back down towards Marine, and that's the neighbor across the street from Marine Boulevard. Next, please. Here, let's see, where am I here? Here I'm kind of on that board walkway, and I've turned and I'm looking towards the ocean a bit to the west at the neighboring house. Next, please. And now I've walked up onto the west side of the house. You see that's the western, at the left is the western corner with that deck up on top. And you're seeing the patio at grade behind the house and the hammock and some beach chairs and things out on it's a cleared area out there. Next, please. Here I've gone onto that walkway, looking back out at the patio area, giving you a sense of what's back there and the vegetation, looking a bit west there and south and west, I guess. Next, please. Let's see, here again, I'm on the back patio area looking directly at the ocean, the wood walkway to the dune and that kind of seating area out there. Next, please. And I've just walked out just to show you that cleared area out there where the walkway ends right there and the neighbor's house to the west. Next, Tyler. Then I've gone to the other side of that. I'm looking east. Next, please, Tyler. Now I'm turning back to the house just to give you a view from there. Next, please, Tyler. Then I'm just looking down directly to kind of give you a sense of what we're looking at there with the dune and the existing vegetation, looking to the west. And next, please, I turn around. Here, I'm looking back at the house and the house to the neighbor to the west. Next, please. I think I go to the east just to give you a sense of the scale of the neighboring houses. It's nice to see a lot of them aren't that large there, but and the sense of the dune, what's there. Here's another shot just to give you some neighbors there. That is a large one to the left in the middle. And that may be my last shot. I think that's my last shot. Any questions, board members? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to Lori. I believe you're the agent for the applicant this evening.
I am the agent, but I will introduce the project and the team, and then I will relinquish my time to Rick Whalen and to Bob Grover. So our original application was submitted in 2017 for an 808 square foot addition and 373 square feet of first, second, and roof decking, and 9 variances were required. The application was denied. The decision stated that the applicant is not proposing a simple addition, but rather an extensive project. One member also objected to the fact that the roof deck could be seen from the beach. So the project has been redesigned and reduced in scope and scale. Only 2 variances are requested now. All construction is proposed landward of the existing residence. The proposed project is now a simple addition of 748 square feet with a 130 square foot deck. A roof deck is no longer proposed, and an IAOWTS will be installed. The addition is necessary because the applicant has had 2 children, a boy and a girl, since he bought the house. They are now 5 and 6 years age and in need of separate bedrooms. Joining me tonight are Rick Whalen to address the legal aspects of the case, Robert Grover, Director of Environmental and Coastal Sciences for Greenman Peterson, our client James Shanick, and his architect John Edelbaum, in the event you have any questions about program or design. I turn it over to Rick.
All right, thank you, Lori. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good to see you all. Everybody at home, nice and cozy. So Lori just sort of set things up with the basic introduction. I thank her for that. Let me just very quickly address the notice. I don't think we have a defective notice. The property is identified by street address, by subdivision block and lot number, and by tax map number. And I think anyone looking at the size of it would see It's 16,00, and I think they pretty quickly figure out that just somebody left a zero off. So that's all I'll say about that. The subject property is the applicant's home. Mr. Shanick actually rented here from 1996, rented the house for 5 years before he bought it in August of 2000. At the time he bought the house, he was not married, and since then he has married and now has 2 children. One is a girl who's 5 years old. The other is a boy who's almost 7, and both of them are full-time students in the Amagansett School, and both of them actually have been in the school for 3 or 4 years, whatever the period is, depending on the the girl's age. I'm not sure when they accept you at pre-kindergarten in Amagansett, but this is the family home. Mr. Shanick, as I said, has actually lived here himself for 25 years. This is the smallest house in the neighborhood. If you look at the aerial photograph, certainly on the ocean, and by a fairly significant amount. It's even smaller than the neighboring house to the west, and much smaller than most of the other houses in the area along the ocean. The basic reason for the variance request is that the house only has 3 bedrooms, and the family has 2 children, including a boy and a girl. So, particularly as the children grow older, they're going to need their own bedrooms. There are only 3 in the house right now. The applicant's mother visits for about a month every summer. There are other family members who visit. There's really no place to put them. And right now, when a visitor arrives and a visitor is staying at the house, obviously both children are forced to move into 1 bedroom, but that's not a long-term solution, particularly as the children get older. So that is the reason for the addition. Everything about this is designed to provide a separate bedroom with a small bath for each of the 2 children. Among the other issues with the existing layout, and you can see this on the floor plans, is that the 2 bedrooms that exist right now are not of equal size. One of them is right next to the kitchen and the living room, basically not suitable for the kids in the long term. So the addition builds a 2-story, we'll call it a pod, with the northern end of the house, which would afford 1 bedroom and a very small bath and a little closet for each of the children. And that's pretty much all the space occupied by the addition. Other than stairways, there's no wasted space in the addition. And as you also can see, on the survey, the addition is built directly off the rear of the house to try to maximize the setback from the coast and from the dune crest to the greatest degree possible. So in light of the zoning board's decision in 2018, when there was a bigger project proposed, I should point out that at that time, the applicant was looking for an 808 square foot addition. It's now 748 square feet, again, 2 stories. There's been a substantial reduction in the amount of proposed decking. In fact, the decking proposed now is less than the existing decking on the property. So the decking associated with the addition represents a reduction in the amount of decking on the site. The dune crest setback variance in 2018 for the house was to be 81 feet. The current dune crest setback variance that's sought is 58.5 feet. We'll now be at the nearest point. The addition will be 41.5 feet from the dune crest. As I said, the area of decks and balconies has been significantly reduced. We're only proposing about 132 square feet of decking with the addition, and that is less decking that is occupied in the space where the addition would go right now. All of the addition is on disturbed land. It's being built on the driveway, as well as an area that is occupied currently by the septic system. So there is no undisturbed or native soil or native terrain on which this addition will be built. By building it to the north side of the house, we're tucking kind of in the rear of the existing residence, so it won't be visible from beachgoers, or to minimize its visibility from beachgoers. The existing house will largely shield the addition. Only one other home can really see this addition. That is the neighbor immediately to the west. And it's my understanding that that neighbor has submitted a letter or an email in support. I don't know if that's in your files yet, but I believe Kyle has seen it. It came in, I think, undated. But the neighbor to our west, who's really the only one who can see this addition, is in support of the application. The neighbor to the east, who is in the Gansett Dunes subdivision, You cannot see that house from this property, and they cannot see our house from theirs. That's how much vegetation there is between the two properties and on both sides of that common beach access walkway that Chairman Whalen showed at the beginning. There you go. You can see all the vegetation to the east side of the applicant's house. The applicant will install a gravity-fed low nitrogen septic system. There'll be obviously the usual mitigation in terms of project limiting fencing, revegetation of disturbed areas, etc. Basically, pretty much, what the applicant did was to read the 2018 decision, which is a denial by the board, scale the project back to its absolute minimum, redesign it to address all what we feel is all the concerns that were raised by the board in 2018. And, we think we've addressed everything that the board asked us to, suggested in its denial that would have to be looked at. In terms of the variance standards, very briefly, granting the Dunecrest variance requested here is not going to change the character of the neighborhood. The only property they can actually see us is immediately to our west, 307 Marine Boulevard, and they're in support of the project. We don't need any dimensional variances from yards or from pyramid law or from height. The only dimensional variances sought relate to the Dunecrest setback. There is no alternative. This is an important point. I want to really make this point, emphasize this for you, because this was a major part of the 2018 decision. There are three main reasons why we cannot build a new house in a more landward location on the property and achieve the applicant's goals at the same time. First is cost. A new house, we estimate that a new house would add about $1 million onto the project cost. That's not in the applicant's budget. The applicant is budgeting for and planning to build an addition to provide 2 bedrooms for his children, not to build an entire new house. So building a new house would add over $1 million, or about $1 million estimated to the existing proposed cost. It would also mean additional costs to demolish the existing house, restore the Dunecrest, and then you have to add to that the disruption of having to vacate your house for about a year, find a new property to rent or to live in, possibly move your kids out of the school district, all of that disruption. It's just not viable. The second reason is that the New York State DEC, as you know, we're within the CHA area, their policy is if you build a new home in an area that's south of the CHA line, they don't allow you, as a policy, they don't allow you to have more ground area coverage than you have when you started. So we're already at 2 stories with the house. If we were to build a new house in a more landward location on the property and everything is south of the CHA line, we can't build the additional space we need for the 2 bedrooms. That kills the idea right there, because there'd be no purpose to building a new home if you can't get the additional bedrooms for the children. And then finally, in order to build in a landward location on the lot, we would need a height variance from you. And as far as I know, the zoning board has never granted a height variance in feet for a project, even when dictated by FEMA. You can tell from the survey that the building location on the site is around 10 feet above sea level. We're in a VE17 zone. That means the bottom of the first floor joist has to be at elevation 19 feet. That's FEMA's regulation plus the 2 feet of state freeboard. The floor joists themselves, I understand from the architect, that will add about, the support structure adds, let's say, roughly 2 feet to the height of the structure. So your first floor is starting at elevation 21, where the grade is elevation 10. The proposed addition is not excessive in terms of height. We're only projecting 9 feet in terms of height from floor to floor or floor to roof. So assuming 9 feet for each of the 2 stories of the house, we'd have to build a 30-foot tall flat roofed house, and we would need a variance of 5 feet. The only application I know of where you've addressed this issue, and I was involved with it, was Brett Hirsch on 189 Marine Boulevard back in 2017 and 2018. A height variance was needed there, again, because of FEMA. The board took a straw vote to deny the variance, and the applicant ultimately, modified the application to come in with a 1-story house. And so no denial was ever issued, but that's what the board decided. And finally, I would just say that if you were doing that, if you were pushing the house to the extreme northern end of the property, and that's where the DEC would dictate it would go, you have to fit in room for your septic system and your parking. You'd have to take down pretty much all the vegetation, along the south side of Marine Boulevard. And we have to anticipate, particularly with the height variance involved, that the neighbor would be very unhappy and would oppose it. I'd say the requested variance is not substantial. We're looking at a 2.1% increase in building coverage resulting from this addition. It's only the amount of additional floor area, I think, of building coverage is 338 square feet. Again, we're trying to build the house or the addition as far as we can from the dune crest. We've maximized the setbacks to the greatest degree possible. This is the minimum variance possible. If you look at the floor plans, the bedrooms for the two kids are 11 by 14 each. That's under 150 square feet per bedroom, which is slightly substandard, I'm told, for what's typically considered to be an acceptable bedroom. And other than the bedrooms themselves, there is a little bit of stairway, one very small bathroom for each bedroom, no bathtub, and a very small amount of closet area. So this is an attempt to provide 2 bedrooms as small as possible for the applicant's 2 children. That's the goal. That's the sole purpose of the project. We're building it in an area that is already disturbed. None of this is native dune land, and the impact on the applicant, on the family, is significant, whether you grant or deny this variance. So we really hope that you will, look at the project favorably, take into consideration the importance that this has for Mr. Schoenig's family, and grant the requested relief. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. Real quickly, just a quick question. It seems from the building plans that the survey, it seems that the northern side of the house, if you refer to the floor plans, there's a little bump out proposed and hatched on the proposed first floor plan for the kitchen area there, and it becomes a deck on the second floor plan. But that's really not called out on the survey.
Hold on, I have the plans here, so let me just take a quick look.
Yeah, that's existing. Yeah, go to the proposed.
Yeah, you're talking on the first floor level, John?
Yeah, it looks like it's existing here, but if you go back to the existing first floor, the first floor, see at the kitchen and the dining, if you go to the existing on the left, and now you go to the proposed on the right, that kitchen dining area bumps out, and I don't see that reflected on the survey unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, I do see what you're saying. Into that deck area, there's a IT, I guess that's an IT closet and a small closet.
Well, it's in addition to the house. It's certainly
right. A 3-foot bump out.
Well, I think it's more than 3 feet, I would guess, actually. Oh, what's it say? 3 feet? Oh, does it say 3 feet?
It's 3 feet.
Okay, but anyway, that's not reflected on the survey. And I'm wondering if that's not reflected in all the coverage and the clearing and all the other calculations. I think it might be over an existing deck, but nonetheless, it looks like the survey is not correct.
Yeah, I'm going to have to defer to
It looks like
John Ilbem on that. I do see what you're looking at, John.
It looks to me like it's hatched on the survey. It's not a solid line for some reason, but it is hatched.
Well, it's not hatched. Not what I'm looking at. Well, we can pull the survey.
Not hatched.
It's not hatched.
I'm
It's got
sorry,
a dashed line.
It's dashed. Your dashed line,
But
yeah.
everything else that's proposed is a very dark shade, as it.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's incorrect. Okay.
All right. Well,
I think
we'll have
that's
to
because
clarify if that is actually. We'll clarify whether that's proposed.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move along. We have a long night, guys, and I got to tell you something that we gave Rick plenty of time, but we have a long night. We've got much ahead of us as a board, so I'm going to ask you to be very brief and not repeat what you submitted in the document. So let's move along, please. I have no further questions at this time, unless board members have any questions for Rick.
I do.
No,
I have a
Roy,
question.
I'm talking about board members. Go ahead, Roy.
So on the survey, it's showing your existing and proposed clearing are not changing. Is that correct?
That's what I see, Roy.
All right. So in order to install, the way I see it, in order to install that septic system, you're going to have to clear that natural vegetation there, are you not?
I've been there. I don't know that I would regard that as natural vegetation. There are trees over there, but that's a lot of bare sand, and for all I know,
Isn't that dunescape?
It's sand, but
Yeah,
I
no,
don't.
there's a lot
it's
of juniper in
it's
there.
not. Let me I don't.
No, I can tell you it's not very well. It's a shame it doesn't have beach grass. It looks like, and I saw it raked up at the bottom. It looks like the natural understory, whatever ground covering is kind of raked up and manicured, and it's a shame it isn't beach grass.
There's no ground cover there, as I recall.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's natural vegetation.
Okay.
There's a lot of juniper planted there,
Yeah.
which are not
Okay.
native.
I don't see. I don't
Bob
see
Grover
any.
is the next speaker.
Okay, and I'll make it.
Other questions for me?
Yeah, maybe questions. Any other questions, board members for Rick? And then we'll move along. And I'll just make a note. I don't believe in the filing. There's a revegetation plan as well. But nonetheless, let's move along to Mr. Grover.
Chair, I do see Mr. Grover on the phone line.
Yeah,
I will
please.
unmute that right now. The last 4 digits of his phone are 8536.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for unmuting me and the opportunity to address this board. Bob Grover, GPI, Babylon, New York, Director of Environmental and Coastal Sciences.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead. Hold on a second. I'm going to hold on a second, please. I have to swear you in. I don't, unless you're an attorney, I have to swear you in. I take it you're not. Do you swear, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, go ahead and good evening, and go ahead, please.
Okay, I'm gonna try to make this really brief. In order to do that, I'm gonna have to implore you to go back and read my 2018 report on this property, which was also submitted as part of the present hearing. I did re-inspect the property about a week ago and submitted an update, brief update of my report. But this is not a typical coastal setting, and you can't take one approach for all areas of the coast. This is a very, very unique area due to the massive amounts of sediment that continue to re-nourish this beach and this dune. And I won't go back into the geologic history. It's all in my report. I really urge you to read it. But what I do want to emphasize that, yes, sea level is going to rise again, 20 to 30 inches probably by 2050. That's a big problem on most of the coast, but maybe not here, because what's going to happen is that history is going to repeat itself. And as sea level rises, the erosion of the Montauk Bluffs and the bluffs along Heather Hills will accelerate, and they will do as they did 10,000 years ago. They will deliver massive amounts of sediment to the offshore and nearshore and onshore area where this project is situated, and most of Amagansett for that matter, probably as far west as of the golf course. So this is an extraordinarily stable area. I have no concerns whatsoever that sea level rise will affect it in the near term of the next several decades. And there's history to back that up, geologic history, which I've spelled out in my report. So there really is not too much to worry about in terms of this ever becoming destabilized, this area of the coast, at least not in any of our lifetimes. So I would urge you to go ahead and approve this project, and certainly do not give it any demerits because of its location on the top of a dune, because this is not an ordinary dune. This is a unique area, not just unique to East Hampton or not just unique to Long Island, but unique to the whole east coast of the United States, the ocean shoreline of the United States. Very, very few areas in the United States possess this type of stability. So I urge you to take that into account and to approve the project. And I would be happy to answer any questions. If there are no questions, then I believe the applicant, James Shaynock, would like to conclude our presentation.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any questions. Board members?
No.
No. Okay, go. Let's introduce the applicant or unmute him.
Yes,
Michael,
Chair.
please.
Yeah, I'll unmute him right now.
Yes, hi there. James Shanick here, 301 Marine Boulevard. I'm the owner of the house.
Okay, good evening. Are you an attorney?
No,
Okay, then I'm going to swear you in. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, good evening. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. Thank you. Well, I want to echo Dr. Maslin's words of praise. I appreciate what you're doing. It's an important job, and I admire the amount of time that you put in. No good deed goes unpunished. Let me mention just briefly or amplify what Rick said with regard to need. This is a needy situation because I have these two children who are a boy and a girl, and they, I think, work best in an area that's less noisy with respect to the house, and also, importantly, for their own development, not competitive with one another in terms of, one room or the other. We've designed the most minimal accommodations for them, but identical accommodations, and also away from the sort of noise corridor. So I would say that. I would also say that we took every single word of advice in the previous rejection by the board, every single one of them, and we've fulfilled in this new plan that group of requests. So I obviously urge your consideration and hopefully passage because our kids will benefit. And let me just say finally that this is not a financial transaction for us. We've been here for quite a while, and I think my kids will end up with this house, and it's not going anywhere. We're not flipping this house. It's not a financial matter. It's really a functional matter for these children. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go to the planning department.
Good evening, board. Tyler.
Tyler, good evening, Tyler. I'll go ahead and swear you in, Tyler, if you please.
Sure.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great, thanks. Go ahead, please, Tyler.
Sure. So this parcel is located on the south side of Marine Boulevard. It's near the intersection with Treasure Island Drive in Amagansett. The project before the board is to construct a 748 square foot first and second story additions, 132 square feet of first and second story decking, and an upgraded sanitary system. I'll pull up the aerials again. Just to give you an idea of the neighborhood. Obviously, this house and the house next door are incredibly close to the dune crest here. It runs right along, very close to both those properties. A bit better idea of the neighborhood. This is sort of the end of the normal side of Marine Boulevard, if you want to call it that. More recent development here on this one where they tore down a house that was non-conforming and built it further back on the property. That house may have actually gotten a slight height variance, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think it did. Yeah.
Built it there. I think it originally came in with a significant height variance and pyramid, and then they redesigned it slightly and reduced it. They cut the height down. Just to give some context. And we also have some oblique images here. Again, the dune crest running very close to both these residences here. That's from the east and from the south. Okay. So this house has a bit of a history with the board, and being that it's pre-existing non-conforming, section 255-860 of the town code limits expansion of the pre-existing non-conforming building to no more than 50%, which would be the 50% cap that the board is familiar with. The plans submitted show that the existing GFA of the residence in 2001 was 1,849 square feet. This would allow a 50% expansion of 924.5 square feet. In 2003, there was a ZBA determination which allowed 112 square foot addition, which then left 812.5 square feet remaining. The current proposal is for 748 square feet of additional gross floor area, so taking up the vast majority of that 50% cap. As was mentioned, there was a 2018 ZBA denial, which was an application which was requesting an 808 square foot two-story addition, which would also have added 2 bedrooms, resulting in a 5-bedroom house with changes in the decking. And I have the survey of that. to give some context as to what that was. So that was, they had additions sort of surrounding that, as well as a chunk of that addition much closer to the house. So obviously a different design, same sanitary system, but obviously a different design. The variance there was significant because that piece of the house that was on the west side of the residence. So the current application is very similar to that previously denied application. So it's 748 square feet versus the 808 square feet, which was denied. The previous applications were more seaward, as I mentioned, off that northwest corner of the residence, which extended then northward, and those small additions on the west and northeast side. The current application is proposing all of the additions to extend northward from the existing north wall, and the bulk of the additions are located slightly more north on the property than in 2018. In the 2018 determination, the board found that granting the requested variances would cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. The variances were substantial. They could be achieved through another method and would have an adverse impact on the environment. And additionally, they were self-created difficulties. Overall, the board found that the expansion of the residence was significant enough that, with the residence being one of the closest houses to the primary dune crest in a vulnerable location with sensitive natural resources, that expanding it in its current location would be detrimental to the character of the neighborhood, and that the requested variances were substantial. The board found that the significant expansion of the residence made the property a better candidate for retreat rather than expansion in the current location. The planning department's concerns with the current application are the same as the last time on this property was before the board. The planning department is recommending denial of the current application. The residence is in a vulnerable location. It's approximately 130 feet seaward of the coastal erosion hazard line and is in a VE 17 velocity flood zone. The residence is located less than 20 feet landward of the dune crest and is extremely non-conforming to dune crest setbacks. There are no conforming locations available for additions to the existing residence, and any additions would require significant variances. In fact, the far north side of the proposed additions are located less than 80 feet from the dune crest. So even if they were located that far back, variances would still be required.
Okay, thank you, Tyler.
I got a bit more. I apologize.
Oh, good. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have a bit more. I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought. Thank you.
That was quite right. So with the possibility of increased storm intensity in conjunction with sea level rise, it's the planning department's opinion that to further increase the nonconformity of the residence is contrary to zoning. The Atlantic coastal shoreline is a dynamic feature that can change drastically over time, from shoreline accretion to rapid erosion. What has been is not guaranteed to continue. Proper coastal planning dictates that we do not continue to expand on nonconforming structures, rather that we retreat and relocate nonconforming structures in conforming or more conforming locations in order to increase setbacks, to both reduce impacts of those structures as well as to limit vulnerabilities. The purposes of zoning are to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the people of the town of East Hampton by regulating the uses of lots and lands and the dimensions, locations, and uses of buildings and structures throughout the town. The board should consider the purposes of zoning when looking at this project. Is this in line with orderly growth? Will the project promote proper use of the land? And is the safety and health of the applicants or the neighborhood at risk? The planning department feels that it is not prudent to allow significant expansion of such non-conforming structures located so close to the dune crest and recommends denial of the project as proposed. The property in its current configuration is best suited for only a small addition on the landward side of the residence. The 50% expansion cap in the town code is only the allowable limit set on the board, what the board is allowed to approve, not a guarantee of expansion. If such significant expansion of the living space within the residence is required, the property would be best suited for a complete redevelopment with a larger residence located significantly more landward on the property, as was suggested by the board in 2018. The current application is not significantly different than the 2018 denied application. The size of the improvements are very similar and still lend themselves to a complete relocation of the residence rather than such a large addition to the existing house. And other than that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Okay, Tyler, thank you for your work on this. I don't have any questions. Board members, any questions for Tyler?
Mr. Chair, I just want to say that the item that you noticed, that bump out, to me, scaling it, it looks like it might be as much as 4 by 18 feet, which would be 72 square feet. If that's not included in the calculations, then we could potentially be over the 50% allowable addition. If we can check those calculations and see what it is on the drawing, but you pointed out that may not have been included in some of the other.
It's definitely included in the square footage numbers because they came from the building plans, and the building plans are showing that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would want to make sure.
I'm not concerned that the gross floor area numbers are incorrect.
Okay, yeah, I would still, thank you, Tyler, but yeah, I think, Rick or Lori, I think it would be, I'd appreciate if you would, between the time now that we close the written record, that you check with the engineer and make sure that all that is included and things are, and that can be simply, you can just write a memo to the file if that is all correct, and if not, we would need that to be updated, obviously, before we make a decision on this.
Yes,
I'm sorry, John.
Go
ahead, Rick. You can address it.
Yeah, I'd like to make a closing statement here, but first of all, yes, I completely agree. We have to resolve that question about the bump out on the north side of the kitchen area. So we will find out what's going on. I looked at the plans very carefully and have to admit I didn't notice that. I guess I was focused really on the bedroom additions. So we'll address
if I
that.
can step in here for 1 second.
Go
Let me
ahead.
just step in for 1 second. I was looking at it more closely on the survey, and it appears that VHB is only showing second-story decks in dashed lines on both sides of the addition. So they didn't call it out as an addition. They're showing it as a second-story deck.
Right.
Well, in any event, the survey doesn't match the building plans.
Right.
I think we agree on that. So we have to clarify this.
Right.
No, it does. It does.
Well,
it's not. Well, anyway, it's not. It's because it's also a first-story addition. They wouldn't just. He's poching what's dark is what's new proposed. If you look at the window, and on the first floor, it's a new addition. So I agree.
Right, but if you look at the inset on the survey, Chairman, look at the inset on the survey, and you'll see that the proposed decks on both sides of the addition are in dashed lines.
I do. I do, Lori, but I'm saying on the survey, it should be called out as a first-story addition below it, and it's not. And I just want to make sure that your coverages and the surveyor's calculations include that first-story addition. That's my point.
Okay. All right. We'll address it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree with the chairman. I'd just like to wrap up if I could, John.
Yeah, make it brief, and if you would, Rick, and not repeat yourself. Please.
No, I'm not. I do want to address a couple of the points that were made by the planning department. First of all, in terms of the stability of the coastline, and this is not something I'm going to get into any length now. We can submit something in writing. The Beach Hampton subdivision maps were filed prior to World War II. They're more than 80 years old, including the subject map. And if you go back and look at that map, or even the survey, you will see that the beach grass line, when the map was filed, is where the primary dune crest is today, shown on the survey. And if you look at the old maps, you'll see the same thing. So this coastline, Bob Grover's right, this coastline has been remarkably stable and even accreting for the last 80 years. I want to make that point. But the most important thing is the purpose and the job of the zoning board, in my view here. We've demonstrated that there is a need for this family. It affects the health and safety of the family. Mr. Shanik made that point as to why that's true. We're building an addition to a non-conforming house. The addition constitutes about 28% of the floor area of the completed dwelling. It's not a very large addition. We are stuck with the house we have. The planning department pointed out that the zoning board decision in 2018, and I don't remember this, but I'm sure that Tyler is right, felt that this was a self-imposed hardship. This owner, Mr. Shanik, has lived here for 25 years. He's owned the place since 2000. He didn't buy into the 3 bedrooms at the house with 2 kids. The children came much later. You can't say it's a self-imposed hardship that a house you bought in 2000 when you were unmarried and had no children doesn't suit your needs 20 years later or 21 years later when you have 2 children. that's not a self-imposed hardship unless you're, you want to make the point that having kids is a hardship. So I think that the board has to. This is the reason we have variances and the reason relief is granted from otherwise general zoning standards and requirements is to deal with the individual circumstances that come with owning property. And I think in this case, we've made a very clear showing that there is something that's unique to this family, to their ownership and the use of the land. And it certainly warrants what we regard as the relatively minor relief that we're asking for tonight. I appreciate your consideration, and we will submit in writing the matters that I've just talked about.
Okay, thank you, Rick. LTV, do we have anyone in the public, LTV holding?
No, there are no callers except the callers for this application.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, board members, I'll close this out unless any board members have a question or comments or anything. Okay, I'll take that as a no. So with regard to the application of James Shannock at 301 Marine Boulevard in Beach Hampton in Amagansett, tax map number 300-177-1-42, I make a motion to close the public hearing and to leave the written record open until 2 weeks after the time that the transcript of this hearing is posted on the town's website.
I'll second it.
I concur.
Terry?
You're muted.
Muted, Terry. She's giving us a thumbs up. I don't know, Council, if the thumbs up works. She concurs, good. Okay, thank you all. Thank you all for participating, and thank you, Tyler, for your work on this. Okay, we'll move on next. We have a rehearing to consider modification of an 11/15/2017 determination. The applicant is Robert De Niro. The lot size and location is 61,478 square feet total at 242 Old Montauk Highway in Montauk tax map number 300-87-3-6. Excuse me.
Hello?
The description is to allow the as-built modifications to the accessory structures of a 2,554 square foot two-story residence with basement, 740 square feet of decking and sanitary system on a parcel of land containing coastal bluffs and beaches. The relief sought here is a modification of the zoning board's natural resources special permit and variances determination filed 11/15/17. The residence and decking remain 55 feet and 49.6 feet respectively from the bluff toe where a 125 foot setback is required. This is in the A residence zoning district. The flood zone here is a flood zone X, velocity VE flood zone, elevation 18, and the secret class is type 2. And council, do we have a proper affidavit of service and posting?
We have an affidavit that the mailings were done on the 21st day of April and that the posting was done on the 20th day of April, so the paperwork appears to be in order.
Okay, thank you, Nancy Lynn. Okay, this is in, no, I'm not sure. Terry, did you take this, Terry?
Yeah, I'm doing this one.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Terry, if you wouldn't, you feel, thank you.
Do I have photos? That's the official notice of posting. It was hard to read, but it was properly posted, I guess, next to the construction sign. This is the top of the driveway. You can probably all recall it's kind of an S-shaped driveway that goes all the way down toward the beach. Next. Now, this is one of the modification requests. This generator was added after the approval that we had back in 2017. And you can see on here a lot of, what I noticed was a lot of sand and runoff caused by, the wet weather that we have had. There were a couple plantings or it's proposed to be revegetated, but from the look of this right now, it looks like the re-veg really needs to be much more improved. Next photo. This just shows that it's been run off, and you can see some of the sand and soil has been washed down onto the area next to the garage. Next. And I turned around, and this is the other side. This is another change that was made, and looking for the modification approval. This was the wall. I don't know if you recall, but the wall ended in the dark area toward the right, by about the third post that's there. And this wall was moved over, and not moved over, it was added to, going over to the staircase for the house. And this is the other modification request. There had been a concrete drive, sort of, going down to the beach from this point where the wall originally ended. That is now has been removed and is going to be just re-vegged, and a path no longer to the beach. The path is going to be modified to go through the pool area. Next. Now, this is a shot from, where am I? Yeah, from I'm looking over the wall that we just saw in the previous picture. So this where all that concrete had been removed. You can see a number of bayberry shrubs have been put in, and the fencing for the project construction there. And then slightly at the top of that photo, you can see the little landing and stairs that led down to the beach. There's a gate on the side there. It's, yeah, right there. That is now the gate that's going to be used to create the path to go down to the beach. And this area where the bayberry is proposed for revegetation, but again, it's very sparse right now, and also looks like it needs to be tightened up quite a bit. Next. So this is another shot of going down. You can see various spots on the wall that had been, some were repaired, some was added to. And I'm going to be walking down to that beach area. All this other, I believe, is just construction wood that is still up from the project. The permanent railing and fencing looks like it's, this mahogany that you see in the photo. And the rest, I assume, is going to be removed when the project's done. Next. Just some more of that as we're going to see the staircase down toward the pool area, and some more fencing and another gate to the pool. I'm going to go down there. Next. And now this is another slight change that was made for the modification. This is a shed that had been on the original proposal, but the size became larger with the actual construction of the project. It was originally slated for 12 feet by 4 feet and ended up being 10 feet by 6 feet, and slightly reduces the setback to the bluff by about 2.5 feet, I believe. And this area you see on to the right of that, it's all the construction, the fencing and everything is there to protect it, but there's a lot of also does not look very well revegetated, and on the left side, which is all part of the revegetated area also, proposed to be on the original. Take the next shot. Next. And this shows, so now I'm back on the, showing the way it looks right now, and the bare areas toward the beach on this. Next. Okay, now I'm shooting back up. I'm down at again looking up at the new wall that had been constructed. And next. Again, this is just into that area where the protective fencing had been put up, and to show that it's still there. Also, I don't know when this project's actually going to be completed. Next. That's just a shot from the other end of the pool of the shed. And next. And again, an area off the shed, and just showing some of the area that I guess still needs to be revegetated or more. Next. And that's just another shot on the other side of the shed. Then you can skip that. Go ahead. And some more of that showing what area will need to be further revegetated. Next.
Terry, pardon me, they also will need railing, as you know, it's more than 30 inches on the height of that secondary wall. So
Oh, okay.
some
So
railing is required by code there. But
that railing. Okay.
yeah.
Well, it didn't look like permanent railing though.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sure it's going to be mahogany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next. This is shot from up above, but yeah, continue on. It's showing basically. And this, I believe, is the last shot, and I'm not sure what this actually is. All of a sudden there was this grassy area, and which was not there originally in 2017. So I'd like the applicant to address what this is going to be, or what it's going to be used for. I believe it was not in the original determination. And
Okay.
Last one.
That's the last. Okay. Thank you, Terry. Board members, any questions? Our field report?
No.
No? Okay. Okay. Let's move along to the applicant's agent. I believe we have Pamela Glazer. Is that correct with us? Or is she Mike from LTV? Could you unmute her if she's not?
John, she's in the Zoom. Go ahead.
Good. Good evening, Pamela.
Good evening, everyone. Let me try to explain a little bit about trying to finish this project.
We'll need to swear her in first.
Oh,
I beg your pardon. I was thinking you. Okay, Pamela, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes. I do.
Okay, go ahead, please.
To start from the back, going forward, the grass area at the top of the hill that we were looking at is the septic area, and it was called out on the original determination. We had to get a very flat area required by the health department. So we have those large retaining walls which we had to put in, which were waterproof, and it wasn't a re-veg area, so we were kind of hoping to get, it's the only flat area on the site, to get a little bit of area. They wanted to maybe put the barbecue grill up here and, just have an area that they could actually sit and have some grass. That was kind of the whole area. But, a lot of decisions about the landscaping haven't been made yet. So there is some temporary things going on, including what to do for the re-veg or which plants to put in. So one of the situations is that because of the pandemic, the funds for the completion of this house had to be, I guess, kept, limited because of the public figure of the owner. And it got very complicated, and sadly. So we're trying to finish it to a degree that we can get a CO for the project, and then hopefully with the CO get financing to complete it, because the whole situation just got complicated. It's probably too complicated to explain, but it has a lot to do with publicity and just things that I'm not 100% privy to. But we are just hoping to be able to enhance the re-veg and complete the handrails, which as you see, we put in temporary just so we could get our CO would comply, and we just need that CO to move forward. We also have, okay. So.
So can I jump in, Pamela? I'm just going to jump in for a second, if I could.
Yes.
I understand it's complex. I'm not going to ask you to get into that, but I will say this. First of all, those men at work, the builders know those are not code compliant handrails that they have. They have to be filled in. You can't have that kind of a void in a hand. Roy, Vice Chair Jolene knows that certainly well. That's just one minor point. So you're not going to get a C of O with those handrails. And the other thing, and we can defer to the planning department, to council on this, is that I would like to see or make it a covenant of this approval of this modification. I would like to have a final proposed landscape plan for the whole site. So there, a lot of this isn't just loosey-goosey, ambiguous, we'll do it later, so that there's something on the record that you can be held to. And I will say this, that I believe everything that really has to do with the NRSP, before you get a C of O, the building department is going to ask the planning department, does this concur with all natural resources permits, et cetera? And Brian can comment on that, but I'll just leave it at that and let Nancy Lynn and Brian pick that up later. So continue, please.
We did submit a landscaping plan by Edwina Van Gaal, and we do have that, and it does show the re-veg, you know, the amount of planting that is planned, and we're hoping to proceed with that. I guess that is the plan.
Oh, okay. I beg your pardon. Let me see. I might have. Continue, please.
Other things that I feel like we have done that we had proposed originally, there was as Terry suggested, there was a long concrete ramp from the driveway down to the water, which we removed. And we had proposed to put terrace that all and put stairs there, grass stairs. And we decided that one set of stairs down to the ocean would be enough, and that we would replant that whole area, which is shown here as clearing edge, but in fact it will be additional re-veg. So I don't know if it's a trade-off because we've replanted that area, that the area that's called terrace above the pool terrace would be able to have less vegetation, or as it's closer to the house, but I think we've got some revegetated.
I just have Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Are we looking at this as a simple modification, or are we trying to negotiate trade-offs here?
No, you're right.
Isn't this a simple modification, and shouldn't we just be concentrated on that?
Yeah, I think we should, and leave the building permit stuff away till they deal with when that time comes. I think you're right.
Right. So there's stipulations in the previous application approval, and that needs to be adhered to. And I think we should just stick to that modification.
Yeah, I agree, Roy. Continue, please, Pamela, and we can kind of move along
think
here.
The biggest modification here is that we've removed these stairs, and we have continued the wall that's shown where it says stone driveway. That wall was cut to the line that says clearing edge. The wall was existing, and we've just continued that small piece over to the wood stair. And I think that's really the biggest modification, and the addition of the generator, which is up next to the garage. Otherwise, there have been no other modifications. The house is the same. The deck, everything is in its footprint. The size of the pool equipment shed changed slightly because of the pool equipment itself, and how it had to be serviced. So it got a little wider and a little shorter. We didn't need it this long, but we had to make it a little wider. Other than that, there was no change there. That's where the pool equipment was, and we upgraded the pool equipment, and the heater was not enclosed before, but now it's enclosed. So that's the difference.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, but with the generator, there's an area now where there's a lot of runoff, and that area is not protected on going north.
There's a lot of wild plantings there, and when they did the wiring, they had to dig some up. My feeling is that those plantings, because they're wild, will spread back within probably 1 year. They'll reroot, but there are a lot of dry wells in the driveway, so we have attempted to catch all our runoff before it actually gets down to the beach, and by eliminating that that stair that we were proposed, we really are retaining our runoff water there. So it's a very steep site, and it's well vegetated along it. We've done as best we can to maintain everything. We had to bring new water service and electrical service from the street. So it's been quite a task to keep everything intact.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, board members?
No, I'd like to hear from planning. But...
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm concerned. I mean, the way it's noticed is that to allow as-built modifications, and we just heard a litany of things that appear to have changed. I think we should have something in writing delineating what exactly has changed. I'm reluctant to say we're going to approve a survey if things aren't spelled out correctly.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think we can focus and ask, and Brian is focusing on what's before us, but we can always leave the written record open for any additional information that this board wants before they make the decision.
We did submit a list of things that were changed, and Brian also called it out in his determination.
Roy, do you have a copy of the application for the modification?
I do, in front of me.
The purpose of the modification has a list. I don't know if there's
I have that, Nancy Lynn.
Yeah, which is grass and railroad ties, steps, etc.
So that's our understanding of what things are different. If there are things that are not on there, then it would require.
Yeah.
Everything is on there that we've changed.
Well, I don't see that you mentioned the shed being changed on this list of purpose of modification. You talk about.
Well,
so I think
the shed has always been in that location. So.
Well, you changed the size of it.
Was never called out in the original modification. It was shown as shed for pool equipment. So it was never given as a size, but.
Well, it was on a survey.
Oh.
Okay, I want to keep things moving along here. I'm going to just ask that you submit a written, besides your handwritten notes here, you can please confirm in a follow-up, just a memo, what you see as any changes that have changed since the previous determination. Include everything, like the change of the shed, because the shed got closer to the dune crest. And again, but we want to focus on what we have before us this evening. We're not trying to rehear the whole application, okay? But I would like it, this board would want it to make sure that we are approving, as Roy says, everything, and we know what's changed and what has not. And perhaps your survey is just fine, and that's great if it is. Let's move along now. Brian, if you please. Brian Frank.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman, board members. Brian Frank on behalf of the Planning Department. Am I still sworn in, or do we need to do it?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
So I have available the survey that's on the screen right now is the survey that you're being asked to consider in the modification.
Mm-hmm.
I have available the survey that you originally approved. You can compare them if you'd like. I do have an aerial of the property from 2020 that shows the property under construction. And I'm going to use that just for a moment. As you remember, this application was approved in 2017. This is a unique property in a couple of different ways. It's a flag lot down to the ocean. The driveway is not located in the flag strip. It obviously serpentines across a couple of other properties into the property. The residence, which was originally built prior to zoning, always existed near the toe of the bluff. And we spent a lot of time in the original application looking at the redevelopment. As you know, and I think it's even reflected in Member Berger's photo, the slopes north of the house are very steep. And we discussed that at length when there was a consideration as to whether there should be a retreat on this property. But as you could see from the small amount of disturbance next to the garage, how much runoff is produced from that. If all of this was excavated out to get a residence in there, that that would have been something. So the property was redeveloped, a new residence, decking and swimming pool. Actually, I'm sorry, the pool wasn't touched, but the patio around it was. The variances were granted from the toe of the coastal bluff. No changes were, nothing was proposed in terms of the garage. All the changes focused around a redevelopment of the residence and the decking associated with it. I do want to show. I do want to show you what was on the property that both Ms. Glazer and I believe Member Berger referenced. This is facing south, obviously, towards the beach. This concrete ramp and the walls that paralleled it went all the way down to the beach. And what you saw in Member Berger's photos was the elimination of this area. I believe this green fence is it might have been where there's new fencing now, but softening this up was always part of the application. I am going to move if anybody has a request for either the new survey or the old survey, please don't hesitate to interrupt me. But I'm going to just show you a little bit of what was originally approved for comparative purposes. This is the survey that you approved in your 2017 determination. So where the concrete ramp down to the beach was located, that was proposed to be eliminated, and a series of 4x4 or maybe even 6x6 railroad tie steps were proposed in this location. Those are not there now. This wall that had jutted into the driveway goes straight across and ties into the house. This is the original pool equipment shed here, where it was 12x4, and now it's a slightly different dimension, 10x6. This is the area where the sanitary system was approved, and I believe this is the area where Member Berger showed that patch of turf. I'm going to just, unless anybody has any questions or wants me to leave this up for a moment longer, I was going to bring up the as-built survey.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
So this is the as-built survey. Again, you can see the generator that has been added. There was a small wall here that has been eliminated. Here is the wall that goes across the driveway to the house. As Member Berger had mentioned, there's a gate at this area of the pool patio. And right now, there really isn't much of a defined path that goes to the old set of stairs and steps that were on the property before the 2017 application was approved. These haven't changed. And this area has been revegetated. I think in comparing the survey, that's really the substance of the changes. There's a 90 square foot difference in lot coverage. I asked Ms. Glazer to verify with the surveyor because it is a 40 scale survey. The setbacks to the toe of the bluff don't appear to have been reduced for the residence or the decking, which would be some of the more significant considerations. I also have photos from my inspection of the property in March. Some of that vegetation probably should be supplemented. We generally want to see a lot of woody vegetation in our revegetations. With slopes like this, some plugs of switchgrass, if not beach grass, just to add to the amount of cover. Let's see if I have it in. So this is the size and spacing that we do like to see in Bayberry, but in a flatter area, this might be adequate. But with slopes like this, supplementing this area, you can tell that there's some beach grass that was added here, and it may have been dislodged by the heavy runoff. So some more ground cover is probably necessary to stabilize areas like this. And that's reflected in other areas of the property as well. This is the area of the pool gate. These are the steps that go down to the beach that haven't been changed. And this is presumably the area where beach access is going to be obtained. And again, as Member Berger had pointed out, the vegetation that's there is doing well. But with the slopes and the unconsolidated nature of the soil, it's going to be prone to runoff for a while. They did double up and triple up the sediment control in some places, which has kept that material off the beach. But you would want to see this stabilized with some more vegetation before that sediment control is removed. Back to the survey and the modification. I'm not sure if there's anything I can answer from any of the members. If I can, I certainly will.
Okay, thank you, Brian, for your work on this. Any questions, board members?
Well, Brian, just for the shed, you say in your memo that it reduces the setback to the bluff toe.
Correct. Walbridge has the setback called out here at 27.4. If you scale the old 12x4, that was about 30 feet to the toe of the bluff. That is a reduction in setback by about 2.5 feet.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else, board members? Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to ask Brian, how does the generator fit into what we're considering here tonight? Exactly what are we asked to decide about the generator as it sits? Its location, the condition of its installation?
Well, basically every square inch of this property is in natural resource special permit jurisdiction. So anything on the property that wasn't pre-existing and left there should be covered by a natural resources special permit in order to be eligible for a certificate of occupancy. So I think anything that wasn't part of your original determination needs to be included in the modification.
Then just to reflect what the vice chair's comment was, is that some of what we're discussing tonight falls into the previous approvals. Mm-hmm. And before C of O is issued, I guess the building department would make referrals if they thought that this original application was not followed. So that I have concerns, having visited the site, with some of the re-veg as it stands now, and perhaps some other areas, but that's not directly related to tonight's consideration. Is that correct? Would you say?
That's fair to say. If the vegetation is inadequate, though, this is the time to address it, as opposed to when later in the growing season, when plants are a little bit more prone to die off as it gets hotter. But you want to, in any modification, the building department is going to take a look at the survey that you reference in your determination. And if you approve this survey, you're going to be approving the structures that are included on it.
Well, then I would just like to conclude by saying that if you were to look at the construction site, the perimeter of what has happened here under the 2017 approval, it's obvious that there is some landscape considerations and work still to be done. The environmental fencing that's been put up in some cases is retaining sand that seems to have sloughed off in an area. Other areas aren't planted. I think the slope behind the generator is steep and requires some attention, and all of that would then have to be addressed before a final C of O, I would hope. And I'm wondering, as we sit here tonight, are these things we should be enumerating, or as has been suggested by the vice chair, that these really fall under the previous approval and will be dealt with at the time the C of O is issued?
If I may, Chair, I
Yes.
think the answer to the question is if the original determination had an approved revegetation plan.
Right.
If they are
Nancy Lynn, you froze there. Let's say, shoot.
Gosh, that always happens to her at the worst times.
I know. Yeah, I know. That's too bad. LTV, any ideas there?
We'll see what happens if she leaves the Zoom meeting. She'll have to come back in. They had internet issues at town hall earlier today. I can't do anything right this minute.
Brian, if in essence, if we look at these structures that are enumerated on this, as we have laid out, and then say that the previously approved revegetation plan needs to be complied with, would that be fair?
I think you need a little bit more than that, and a modification deals with some differences in the structures that you've approved. I'd obviously defer to Nancy Lynn, but I don't see why your revegetation couldn't take the current conditions into consideration. Obviously, stability of the slopes here of this bluff face was a paramount consideration in 2017.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed. If some refinements and augmentation of the revegetation needs to be implemented to satisfy the board's perception of anything meeting those NRSP standards, there's a nexus there. It's reasonable. Again, I'm not going to speak for Nancy Lynn, but it seems rational, and it certainly makes it easier for the board to say that their conditions of approval have been satisfied.
Yeah, and again,
Chair,
Nancy
I'm
Lynn.
sorry. Nancy Lynn's coming
Go
in
ahead.
right now. She's coming back.
Right.
sorry, I apologize. For some reason, I got kicked out of the meeting.
Yeah.
Just got totally kicked out. But as I was saying, is that if there are changes to any of the conditions, which includes all of those previously approved survey, building and construction plans, construction protocol, sanitary system, or approved revegetation plan, then those are the things that you're considering this evening. If it's a question of whether they've complied with those, then that's for a different day.
Right.
So my understanding is they're looking for a change in the survey because they did change how they built some of these things, or a change in where things were placed.
So I just want to make a comment, then we can maybe wrap this up. Thank you, Nancy Lynn and Brian. I think the issue, I think we're on the same page. I think the issue is, we obviously, how do we feel about these modifications? That's something we'll make a decision on, but I believe the board, I know myself, that I want to just make sure that we do have a different survey. I haven't seen that revegetation plan, but I just want to make sure that the planning department, before they sign off on the CFO, is very comfortable with the revegetation plan of the current site plan. Some of it is better. I mean, where they took away maybe that wall where it closed off that long walkway to the beach is improved perhaps, but it's a different re-veg. And I just want to make sure that Brian and the planning department is comfortable with what they intend to do there and what is done before the CFO is signed off. That's my comment.
Wait a minute, from the original or?
Well, they had an original building. They did have an original re-veg plan.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that is updated to these conditions, and also make sure that typically Brian will go out to the site and make sure they've adhered to that re-veg plan before he signs off for the building department that this is ready to issue a CFO. So I just want to make sure that they are going to take care of these loose ends, and modify the plan to take care of the modifications because they modified the site plan, and make sure that they augment the revegetation as required to do a proper re-veg. And I don't have to personally see that back here myself. I just want to know that will be in the final record, and that with the planning department's approval before a CFO is issued.
There is a question. Pam, have you submitted a different revegetation plan you're asking this board to consider?
Was another revegetation plan by the landscaper, and Um,
Oh, I haven't seen this one.
So that, I believe, was, there was emails today. I believe that that the board only received it today from the planning department.
Oh, that's why I didn't see this one. Okay. Well, once again, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And I just want to make sure that Brian and the planning department is fine, myself, my opinion, that they are fine with what's proposed. And again, this looks like kind of a partial site, because now that you've got the generator back there, there's other revegetation issues. Scroll up. Yeah, I mean, it looks like, there's some going on there a little bit. Maybe they need to, but my point is, I don't want to, go beat a dead horse here, but
We can't do this modification if we don't have these issues before us. So you
I
need
agree.
to flesh it out tonight.
yeah,
or
so,
we'll have to
okay, then I'll say
continue
this. It
hearing.
looks like this is an older re-veg plan, because you see the walkway, the walkway that is no longer happening there. So let's just say that we'll see if the board agrees with me that we want a revised revegetation plan that is based on the current survey and the modifications, and that it takes into account things like where the generator was installed, the disruption of that bank, and that bank, and that there's additional re-veg up there because it obviously needs it, and there's additional augmented re-veg in some of the areas that they've started. So, yeah, Nancy Lynn, I guess we want to have a current re-veg that matches this modification, correct? That's what we're
Okay,
looking
so
for.
we're going to need, just so that it's clear, we'll need before the record closes, you've asked the applicant's architect to provide you a list of the structures that have changed.
Yeah, any revisions whatsoever. Oh, shoot, she got frozen again.
I also think that we have to see it relative to, like, even the clearing, right? So even the proposed clearing, we have to look at relative to what was approved and how that has changed. Do we not?
Yeah, well, hopefully that's on the current survey. I have a feeling it has not changed much at all. In some cases, maybe it's gotten better because of eliminating that walkway and re-vegging some of that area there. But that's why, again, I don't know the answer. But I would assume that the survey includes the existing clearing, the current clearing.
Well, if
Okay,
I
Mike
can,
at
Mr.
LTV, can we get Nancy Lynn back, Mike? Do we know what's going on?
It looks like her internet went down again, and hopefully she'll be signing back in again.
Yeah. Otherwise, let's wrap this up. Ed, go ahead. Ed, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just had a simple comment that if you visit the site, it's not a site that can be inspected for the vegetation or the plant. It's obviously not even begun in some areas.
Yeah.
So it reads like a site under construction, near completion, but the whole issue of re-veg, planting, density, possible retention, repair, slopes, this would all be in the future. When you look at it, you realize it's not even been attended to. So it's hard to review it at this point.
Yeah, a very good point. A very good point. And that's why all the more reason we want to see a current survey, a re-veg plan that goes along with all these modifications. Any other comments, board members?
No.
Okay, even though, let's
Well,
see.
I do have a question. Yeah, it seems like I'm hearing that there's going to be a CFO, sort of.
No, I don't think the CFO
No.
happens until it's ready to happen, Jerry.
I mean, I would think that this can't happen until all of this is addressed and the modification is approved. If we
Yes, I don't think we're negotiating I'm not negotiating any CFO stuff. The CFO happens when it's appropriate and when it's ready to happen in my book.
Excuse me, Chair. Nancy Lynn's back.
Excellent.
Sorry, the internet, phones, everything went out down here.
Yeah. So Nancy Lynn, you might want to just go back tomorrow. Maybe you can go back and watch a few of these minutes that you missed. I think we basically agree with you. We want to see, we can keep the written record open until they have it submitted. They can write the letter. We can do the usual there. And from the Pamela Glazer, we'd like to see just a Word document of all the proposed changes that since the approval and with the walls, what wall, the shed, whatever happened, the pads being removed, just a list so that we're all clear on that. Nancy Lynn, when you go to write the determination, you have the facts, and you shouldn't have to be trying to describe that. So, board members, are we all good? Is there anyone in the public, Mike, on this application?
No, Chair, there are no phone callers.
Okay, I think we can close out here and leave the written record open. Terry, would you like to make that motion if you're good with that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so make a motion to close the public hearing for Robert De Niro at 242 Old Montauk Highway, tax map 300-087-03-06, to leave the written record open for until 2 weeks after the transcript is posted at the town website.
I'll second it.
I concur.
And I concur. Thank you, Terry. Okay, thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Brian, Nancy Lynn. Okay, we will move along. Have a good evening, Pamela.
Same.
Okay. Next, we have our Georgia Pond aquatic harvester discussion. Board members, we all listened to presentations last week, as you recall, and then this is going to go before the town board, and Brian will be reviewing the EAF with the town board, and we heard from Brian last week. So our task now is to discuss our opinions on how we feel about this, and I believe the town board is perhaps going to listen to our comments and take that into account because they asked us to do that. Is that correct, Nancy Lynn?
Yes, they're going to review not only the hearing that was done last week, but also this discussion, and take your recommendations. Consider your recommendations when they are considering whether or not to grant the permit and whether or not to put any conditions on the granting of such permit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So board member Brenneman is not with us again this evening, unfortunately. This is in his district. I would normally have ask Tim to speak first, but I will ask Vice Chair Deline. Roy, would you mind starting us off, please?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to share screen for a little bit. Basically, I'm bringing you to the slideshow presentation that was brought up last week, so I can talk to that. So anyway, the proposal is a proposal that was underway, I think 2016-18 or 2015-18. It'll be down further to remove the microalgae blooms and toxins from Georgia Pond that have been developing over the years. The presentation outlined the dangerous microalgae blooms that has occurred over there in Georgia Pond. I'm just going to be skipping quickly through some slides, and the blue-green algae blooms as well. The method of removal. And you can see that the result of these algae blooms results in a decrease in oxygen in Georgia Pond, therefore creating a die-off in natural wildlife in the pond, as well as affecting other species airborne as well. So there's been a continual decrease in the pond's health, and if anybody is read over the years as in the East Hampton Star, you can see that Star has been reporting it over the years. In 2016 to 2018, there was taken under, and this is a pilot program, which by the way was brought up, has taken under a mechanical means of harvesting the microalgae and that has been developing in the pond, and through this it's a mechanical means. The way that this removes the algae is it's actually in a shallow removal.
Excuse me,
The
Chair. I'm
proposed-
sorry to interrupt. I just want to acknowledge that we've lost Nancy Lynn again.
Oh, jeez.
Just so you know, and we also lost Brian.
Okay. Okay, well,
Continue. Just
hopefully
wanted
they'll
you to
be
know.
calling. Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I guess they'll be calling in, and we will.
Should we continue, or should
I think we can continue. I think we'll continue on. They
Going, it's just getting ridiculous.
they can. Brian can rewatch this, and Nancy Lynn. I think we'll move along. Thank you, Mike. Let us know. Thank you. Go continue, please, Roy.
Right. So that particular the project happened in 2016 to 2018. The proposal before us today is to do a 5-year commencing in 2021 to continue harvesting the algae blooms. And it'll be primarily during the months of July and September, during the height of this, at the time when the blooms occur. And they've laid out certain areas of where the transport will be transport, the harvest materials will be transported, what the sites will be off the pond that's going to be used to logistically remove it. The targeted species is listed as microalgae and sago pondweed. The mitigation measures is it cuts 1 foot below the water surface, reduces bycatch, and maintains aquatic plant cover. I think reducing the bycatch is important to note for this board. No disturbance of substrate or within 1 foot of the substrate. Low approach speed in the reduce of bycatch. Large animals, snapping turtles, large fish returned without harm. No harvest areas. Extensive biological monitoring. And I think that's one of the questions that this board was questioning is the information that is brought back to the town on a regular basis, so that we can keep in touch with what is going on and the results that is happening. So the mitigation measures lays out here. I want to go to the interesting thing for me, what is promoting the micro and macro algae blooms in Georgia Pond, and it actually is. They reported 50% of the nitrogen that is loading into Georgia Pond is coming from outdated septic systems. The Friends of Georgia Pond have outlined a kind of an effort to get more and more people to switch over to the IIA systems. So this chart is interesting, and I think I passed where I wanted to go. Hold on. Where's that slide I was looking for?
Yeah, no, I think you got to go forward. Yeah, you want the oxygen one?
I want the 2 graphs, bar graphs, and this is it right here.
Yeah, good.
So this graph and the following graph, then I'll spend a few minutes on this, is so in 2014, 2015, you can see the blue-green algae that was highly elevated in the pond. And then,
excuse me, Chair, I just want to acknowledge real quick that Nancy Lynn's on the phone line, and I've unmuted her. Nancy Lynn, are you there?
I'm here.
Thank you.
We have no internet, so you don't have Kyle and you don't have Brian, but I have called in. I'll try to send them the number to call in.
Okay, thanks, Nancy Lynn. And obviously, we hope that we kept moving along with Roy's comments, and hopefully you and Brian
feel
can.
Free.
Yeah. And Nancy Lynn, I was going through the basic refresher course on the presentation that was given to us last week. Right. And I'm sort of paused on this particular slide. I think it's important to our discussion. And in 2014, 2015, we had high levels of blue-green algae blooms. And then when the harvesting stopped, you can see that the decrease in the algae blooms continuing. Now, that interestingly enough happened over 2016, 17, and 18, and it hasn't happened in 2019 and 2020. And they're hoping to close it and start it up again in 2021. Going to the next slide is really my, is where I note and is highly important to me, because I have a little bit of a in my college engineering years, I studied a bit of environmental engineering. So one of the things that is that is important to bodies of water is the dissolved oxygen in the bodies of water. This graph is a telltale of a result, in my opinion, and kind of like the money graph for me. So you can see the dissolved oxygen prior to harvesting in 2016. You can see the return and elevated levels of dissolved oxygen as a result of it. Interestingly enough, even though the levels of blue-green algae have remained low, what's important to note here, in my opinion, is a drop in the dissolved oxygen as a result. So, to me, this tells me that for now, a continued harvesting of the blue-green algae is important to do. And so for me, I applaud what is going on here. I applaud the Friends of Georgia Pond, and I applaud the efforts. And I hope the town undertakes this. It would be my recommendation to go under. In terms of other recommendations and monitoring and stuff like that, I'd like to hear from other board members, but I think I'll drop it off at there. This graph is compelling to me, and I just want to underscore that.
Okay, Roy, thank you for your thorough comments. Appreciate that. And running through that again, that was helpful.
Excuse me, Chair, if I may interrupt, just to ask, we did just receive someone from the town back into the Zoom link, and whoever's on just the audio call, please confirm who it is.
This is Kyle.
Great. Welcome back, Kyle.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, John.
Okay,
Go
we'll
ahead.
move along. Thank you. Okay, Ed, I'm going to ask you for your comments next, please. Ed Johan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to thank the Vice Chair for going to the effort of putting these charts up for us so we could discuss them. I agree with Roy in that I really applaud the effort being made to clean up the pond on behalf of the several groups that are involved, the work that Dr. Gobler's done, and the Friends of Georgia Pond. A couple of considerations, though, that go beyond the mere effort. Obviously, all of us are concerned about blue-green algae in the ponds on the east end. We know what it does environmentally. We can see the damage. The charts clearly demonstrated the kinds of death. And most of us have been around oxygen debt that in these ponds that can cause massive kills and seen that happen. I certainly have. It goes on a regular basis when these ponds suffer this kind of blue-green algae infestation. So I think that it's all very laudable, and I think that the Friends of Georgia Pond have done a good job of mounting an effort here. However, a couple of things that concern me. Again, echoing what the Vice Chair said, the Friends of Georgia Pond recognize, we got a letter yesterday on the 3rd, and they directly commented on the fact that 50% of the nitrogen is coming from wastewater coming back into the pond. And well, my concern would be that although we see the good that this is done, having this harvest in there, that it's not the end all. 5-year program could continue, and if we stop harvesting, we'll see the oxygen levels decrease again if we don't do something about this wastewater coming in. So they outline in the letter of yesterday that they are working feverishly to get other members of their community to sign on to IA systems. It seems critical in the long term that an effort has to continue to be made to stop the runoff problem that we have and the septic problem coming in here. Otherwise, the harvester becomes a Band-Aid, and I'm not sure that it in itself is a long term. I don't think that the proponents of its use have said that, though. I think that Dr. Gobler made it clear that this is an effort to help the health of the pond. So there's a question about how does the pond recover long term? Eliminating some of the nitrogen is one thing. Whether or not an effort would be made long term with the DEC to introduce some filter feeders or what happens when we get back to that reverse tipping point where whatever's in the pond can keep up with typical algae growth and not this explosion. That's one. And then this idea of long-term monitoring is important too, because I think it's easy to say that we see an increase in, the oxygen level there, and we know what it does to certain species. But in the notes of last week and in the documentation received, they said that part of what happens in the harvesting is that they're very careful about larger species, but I don't know that we clearly understand exactly what is being harvested. 18,000 pounds of fish over the time that the harvester operated was noted in their document. And the question for me is that represents a small percentage, I think, of the actual biomass of the pond. But what exactly is being harvested at that point? Maybe it represents not 15% of a population, but 60, 70, 80% of an existing population. Maybe the bass and larger fish survive better than some others do. So for me, I would always recommend here, and I think that it sounds as if the organizations involved care about this, but a little macrobiology in this and trying to keep an eye on what are we doing to the ecosystem as a whole as this harvesting continues. I think it's essential that we do something with these ponds. I think this sounds like a great first effort, but I do think as a recommendation, what we do about septic, what we do to continue monitoring the ecosystem as a whole, not just the blue-green algae, is really important to me. I would agree to recommend that it move forward, but I would love to see that those conditions were kind of taken seriously by those involved. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Ed. Terry?
Yeah. Okay, I agree with everyone. I think the project, the harvester does need to move forward. What I'm reluctant about and what I would give a caveat to for the town board, I guess, is that they're looking for a 5-year approval. I think I would make that 1 year at a time if I were making the decision on it. And with very heavy, not just monitoring and reporting, as to the results and comparing those results to the ones they got in the previous years. We know the harvester is a good assistant to getting us hopefully to the long-term permanent solutions. I think the Friends of Georgia Pond, they have a long-term view also, but I do think actually that their timelines on how much they need, how many wastewater treatments systems that will be upgraded in the next 5 years. I think they need to have more of a stretch goal on those. I know they're working toward that, and it's not a quick thing, but I think ultimately getting everything upgraded along the pond. I also think that perhaps the statistics on how much fertilizer contributes, I think their charts show 1%, is maybe a little low, really, in reality, based on the size of some of the lawns that go right up to the pond, around that pond. But overall, I think the town should move forward with the approval, but I would do it much more cautiously than 5 years. And with much better reporting that the town reviews at the end of each year. And I know the town is already contributing toward the improvements along Route 27, where the former restaurant that property was taken over. So I do think they need to move forward, and I think the harvester is a good aid to that, but I would like to see more. I think for the town board that they should be more stringent on some of the results and results for the long-term solutions, and require more in that area.
Okay, thank you, Terry. It's too bad Tim isn't here this evening. We all appreciate his comments, but nonetheless, I would have to say that that I echo the sentiments of my fellow board members, except for Terry's opinion on the schedule. But I'll get to that. First of all, thank you, Roy, for that summary. I completely agree with your thoughts and your priorities. And Ed, I would mirror. I appreciate your comments. I agree with them 100%. As I mentioned in the last week, was it last week, I believe? That again, I recommended, a report to the town, an annual report to the town board. I certainly stick with that. I have full faith with regard to Terry's comments about the scheduling. I am fine giving the 5-year permit. This permit took about a long time to get through the planning department because of COVID and other issues, and I certainly wouldn't want to have these applicants go through that every single year. I have full faith. I want to thank Brian for his work on this and appreciate his comments as well. But I have full faith in Dr. Gobler's work and his team. I have much appreciation for the Friends of Georgia, and I completely agree with their goals and what they are doing. I agree with Terry. It'd be great if they could, I know they're doing everything they can. I think they're a wonderful organization. As they note, the amount of septic systems that are within the 2-year travel time, and 300 tax parcels are there. And it would be wonderful if all of those folks did whatever they could to take advantage of rebates and to spend their own money to protect their own pond that they get to appreciate more than others, and change out their archaic sanitary systems, because that is certainly what's doing the damage. Again, with Dr. Gobler's work, I have full faith that if the town board wants a report, which I'm sure they will, an annual report, and certainly the planning directors, planning department, Brian Frank, would be invited, as would the public, to those. I would expect that would be at a public hearing and would be on the agenda and would be noticed so that the town citizens could get that report. I recommend that all citizens who are listening and who are interested go to the town's website and take a look at the whole application. There's a lot of information in there to read, and the more simple PowerPoint presentation is there as well. And as well, I highly recommend they read the May 3rd, 2021 letter from the Friends of Georgia, authored by Sarah Davison. That gives, I think, a very good summary, a realistic of what their goals are and what they hope to do. And overall, in conclusion, I would say that I'm in full support of a 5-year permit, with the caveat that there is an annual report to the town board and the planning department and the public. And I would fully expect that issues like the bycatch and the percentage that Ed was mentioning about the fish and all of those, I'm sure that team is listening to us, and that they would include those in their annual reports to the town board. Any other comments, board members, you want to add? Or?
Yeah, I just want you to understand, I am in favor of the project moving forward. I just think 5 years needs a whole lot more, strenuous look at it. It's an experiment that they did back in 2016 and 17. And, I have a lot of the concerns actually that I see in the environmental assessment form that Brian had done too. There's so much more we don't know about this, than we do.
Yeah, I appreciate, and I didn't mean to misrepresent you, Terry. I appreciate that. And also in Brian's comments, there is so much more. And I think, as Dr. Gobler said, this is a percentage of the fix. And as Ed said, it's a Band-Aid if none of the archaic sanitary systems are upgraded, et cetera. Any other comments?
It's just, you don't want that Band-Aid being used for the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah. Hopefully it's going to be.
I do think stretch goals would be a good thing for everyone to look at.
Yeah. Roy, Ed, any final comments there?
I would just say, if you can sustain, and then they did discuss it. I think that was a concern, the board, one of the questions last week, that if you can sustain high levels of oxygen, like is shown in those 3 years, not only will it sustain existing life. It will promote life in that, within that pond. And it seemed like the hope in this thing is that the pond will be self-sustaining at some point. And that's why I think monitoring is so important here. So even though we might lose some, a small percentage of species during the harvesting, I think the promotion of life because of this elevated oxygen levels is primary.
Yeah, and as Ed mentioned, I'll just add that as Ed mentioned about the bycatch and the fish kills that we've all seen, I believe, I can't put my finger right now, but there was note of the bycatch and the species in their report. And again, I would think that Dr. Gobler and his team would be continuing to work on that with the annual reports. And I agree with you, Roy. Hopefully things would only get better. Ed, anything? Ed, finally?
No, I agree with what the fellow board members have said. But my comment really was one of just having an eye on the overall ecosystem and not just concentrating on one aspect of it. And that could come from annual reports, just what's going on with other species that coexist within the pond.
I agree.
Yep. Okay, thank you all. And again, thanks Brian and Nancy Lynn, and to the Friends of Georgia Pond Foundation and their whole team. We will move along now on the agenda. We have, next we have, for under other decisions, we have 80 South Essex Street LLC at 80 South Essex Street in Montauk, tax map number 300-52-1-9.2. And this is in Terry's district. And Tyler, do you want to just kind of walk us through, remind us what our charge is here?
Sure, I would bring up the surveys, but we lost connection to the town network.
Oh, okay.
I can't connect to there.
Well, wait, we're not discussing it. We're just making a motion for a rehearing, correct?
Yes.
So
yeah, it's essentially they're just what it will be before the board for if you want to go to a rehearing is shifting the swimming pool slightly to the east by like 10, 15, 20 feet, something like that. Same setbacks. Just a slight shift so that they don't have to demolish an existing staircase. There's a lot of work they don't want to do that they were already approved for.
Right. So Terry, yes, correct. If you want to.
I'd like to make a motion for 80 South Essex Street as LLC at 80 South Essex Street in Montauk, tax map 300-052-01-9.2 to approve this for a rehearing for the modifications.
I'll second that motion.
I concur.
And I concur. Thank you, Terry, and thank you, Tyler. Okay, moving along. I believe the last thing we have the draft minutes of April 27th, 2021. I have reviewed these. They look fine to me. Can I get a motion, board members, from one of you?
I'll make the motion. They look fine to me too. I'll make a motion to approve the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals minutes for the meeting of April 27th, 2021. Motion to approve those.
I'll second the motion.
And Roy, I concur. Roy?
I concur.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Let's see, do we have counsel with us or did we lose her?
She's here.
I'm still here on the phone line. So
Oh, good, okay.
do it all.
Okay, great, Nancy Lynn. And Nancy Lynn, I believe that's it. Anything on your end, Nancy Lynn?
This is all that I have on our end. You've done your comments. You've done the motion for rehearing in our 4 hearings today. So I think your work here is done.
Yeah, we did it. Okay. Thank you, everyone, this evening and all those who have participated in this hearing. And Vice Chair Jolene, I think we need a motion from you, if you please.
Sure. Therefore, I make a motion to close the hearing for the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals on Tuesday, May 4th at 9:58 p.m.
Second.
I'll concur.
And I concur as well. Thank you all.
Good
Thank you for
meeting.
your efforts.
Guys.
We made it.